That boy was like a madman every day, ceaselessly swinging his sword in training. He even risked his life absorbing the most wicked curses to become stronger. Even monsters with an S-rank danger level were cut down by him in a single move. But to him that still was not enough, because the debt of vengeance remained. In his previous life, he awakened an overpowered skill that could steal the skills of others, even curses. He used to take every wicked curse into his own body, supporting the hero in the hope that his sacrifice would bring peace. But good people truly never seem to live long. Those who bore the name of heroes treated him like trash, even betraying and abandoning him. In that battle in the sky, the Blue Death Knight appeared astride a black steed. That man's terrifying power descended, creating a dreadful pressure. Witnessing the scene before them, someone in the group trembled and wondered, are we truly planning to defeat the Blue Death Knight with only this many people? Silver Sword plunged into the ground. Everyone sank into shock, as if they could not believe it. Cries of Sigrun, Abella, and Mary Diana rang out in rapid succession. The girls hurried over to support their hero, choking out Arthur's name. Crash was covered in strange tattoos and wounds, able only to let out a bitter cry. Arthur, you bastard, what the hell are you doing? Arthur looked at him with an icy gaze, blood still seeping from the corner of his mouth, then declared that he would end everything right here. The world's final hope seemed to have been severed. Before them, only ruins remained amid the white snow. Crash ground his teeth in rage, roaring as he asked whether that man planned to give up after everything they had done to bring him this far. You know how many people fell for this? In his fury, he shouted that it was all because that man had been obsessed with those people. Have you truly gone mad in the end? At once, an angry scream cut him off. Shut your mouth, Crash. Arthur did everything he could. Sigrun, the Empire's third princess and the genius of the Asura generation, furiously cursed Crash as trash who only knew how to steal. Crash froze, unable to believe his ears. His bloodied face twisted with rage as he asked how she dared call her benefactor trash. He pointed straight at the group before him, roaring that without his skill, none of them could have made it here. A violent coughing fit struck him, but Crash still forced down the pain to repeat the bitter truth. If you have forgotten, then let me remind you, starting with you, Abella. Abella, the Red Witch of the Magic Tower, was now standing anxiously beside Arthur. Crash exposed her. You were the one who said losing your voice meant you could not use magic, then begged me to take that curse. When they needed him, they clung to him, and when he no longer had value, they treated him no differently from trash. Now Crash himself was bearing those cruel curses in her place, yet in return for that sacrifice, Abella heartlessly attacked him when he went to get painkillers. Crash ground his teeth and said that from then until now, her habit of looking down on others had not changed at all. Crash's gaze shifted to Mary Diana, the one praised as the strongest spear in the Empire. He curled his lips in contempt, calling her foolish for charging in without thinking, then begging him to take away her pain. Finally, he looked straight at Sigrun, the one who had just called her own benefactor trash. Crash asked in a choked voice, even the person who once sacrificed his eyes for you is considered trash. Memories of their academy days surged back, when Sigrun always pointed her sword at him, simply because he belonged to the Durling Kingdom's faction. He had once been bullied, beaten until he could not fight back, and mocked by the crowd as a useless failure. Yet even now, Crash had silently endured every pain of body and mind, only to be turned away by these traitors. He accepted all that humiliation only because he wanted to find a way to heal Sigrun's eyes. Crash mocked his own naivety, because they were the Asura generation who could save the nation, while he was merely someone cast aside by the kingdom. I have always cleaned up your messes. What did any of it mean in the end? As blood continued to seep from his mouth, he stared at Arthur, the person he had once trusted absolutely, then shouted that he was supposed to be the one to save the world. Memories of the early days returned, when Crash had once knelt at Arthur's feet. And Arthur stood at the forefront of the Asura generation. He had resolved to stand beside that man until the very end. But now only despair remained. Why had that man given up so easily, turning all his hopes into disappointment? Arthur looked down in silence, his face cold and unmoved even though his body was also covered in wounds. He calmly said he could now reveal the truth. As he had once said, this world had no hope left, so he would start over from the beginning. Crash's eyes widened in horror. Cold sweat running down his face twisted with shock. Start over. What are you saying? Before that astonishment, Arthur remained terrifyingly calm and only answered, that is right. Arthur confessed this was not the first time he had witnessed the end of the world, because his skill was regression, then said he would store his memories and return to the past. Arthur's gaze swept over Sigrun, Abella, and Mary Diana, those he considered necessary. He believed that if he began again with his current experience, the chance of preventing the apocalypse would increase greatly. He chose to start over with those three. Crash staggered while clutching his bleeding chest, stammering in horror. Only the four of you, then what about me? That man counted only 4 people as if Crash had never existed. A meaningful smile slowly appeared on Arthur's lips. but that man's gaze was cold enough to pierce bone, and then he ruthlessly cast aside the only comrade who had ever sacrificed everything. I do not need you. Crash stood rooted in place, numb before the bitter betrayal as the chains of fate began to close around him. Arthur curled his lips into a smug smile. That man's black hat skill was truly remarkable. As expected, he could even steal curses that seemed untouchable. He watched Crash collapse, blood flowing from his mouth, then mocked him. What uses regression with a broken man like you? What can you even do now? He calmly made a horrifying offer. Would it not be better to erase all your memories and turn you into a completely different person in the new world? Grass's gaze shook violently, and he realized the cruel truth in shock. So I was only a disposable tool. This bastard had seen me as trash from the very beginning. Arthur kept that fake smile, turned away with the women, and left his final message. Do not worry. I will make good use of people in the next world, and the one after that. See you again. Crash could only cry out in despair. Wait, hold on. As he collapsed into the freezing snow, watching the backs of his comrades fade into the distance, Crash realized deep down that he had always known this. When Arthur's generation ignored him, and he merely stood by without intervening, he understood that Arthur had never truly seen him as a comrade. In the depths of his hatred, Crash shouted, "Take me with you too, you bastard." He crumpled, his breathing in disorder. His consciousness gradually blurred as the curses accumulated over so long began gnawing at his body. A trembling hand clung tightly to the snow-covered ground. This life would go out before the world collapsed. A thought flashed through Crash's mind as he felt death drawing near, but a fierce ray of light burst forth, and he thought, no, I will not let this end like this. He revealed the secret. The Black Hat does not only steal curses, it also seizes skills. Grass resolved to become the strongest, the most important figure, casting aside all pride to bring down the timeline alone and defeat the Heavenly King. Though he had never tried it on Arthur, this time he was willing to risk everything. Black energy erupted, and Crash officially activated the Black Hat skill, determined not to give up even in disgrace. Radiant light surrounded Arthur as he prepared to activate. He opened the time loop to regress, but at that very moment a gigantic hand of darkness, lined with furious purple eyes, suddenly reached out from the void and gripped the hero from behind. Crash, though his face was covered in blood and wounds, still wore a mad, meaningful smile. Wait, that black shadow was the embodiment of the Black Hat skill. The black shadow gradually sealed the space around Arthur tight. Witnessing the insane stubbornness of his former comrade, Arthur panted and looked at Crash in exhaustion. You still refuse to let go. In his heart, Crash answered, Arthur, you have lived through countless apocalypses, and every time I lost my value, you threw me away like trash, leaving me behind in a world on the verge of destruction. Memories of countless deaths piled up before him, proof of Arthur's cruelty across the previous timelines, and Crash wondered how many times he had tasted despair. Now, the situation had completely reversed and he declared coldly, this time, Arthur, you are the one being left behind. He had to pay the price he deserved for betraying him so many times. He looked up at the azure Death Knight descending from the sky. Grass pointed at the traitor and smiled in satisfaction. Perhaps that is true. Standing before the Reaper's side drawing near, Crash repeated Arthur's heartless words. Did you not say it yourself? This world is about to be destroyed. He stared straight at Arthur's face, twisted by fear, and gave a stern command. If you do not want to die, struggle on your own for once. Immediately, the azure Death Knight swung his gigantic greatsword. He brought down a slash filled with deathly blue energy, swallowing Arthur in an earth-shaking explosion. I will save the new world. Blinding light burst through the curtain of bone. Gradually coming to, his eyes widened as he felt life return, and he sprang upright, screaming in terror. Looking up at the ceiling with its glittering chandelier, Crash raised a trembling hand, unable to believe reality. This place is... He stared in shock at the lavish room and its familiar furniture. Was this not his childhood home? He had been reborn into his childhood. The words confirmed it. Crash, 13 years old, regression process complete. He stared at himself in a daze and stammered, have I become young again? The world was eroded, a horrifying phenomenon in which another space encroached upon it, causing the surrounding environment to change for the worse. Worse still, invading creatures from that other world began pouring into the continent. Among them, those with human forms were called world invaders. The appearance of powerful entities sowed terror everywhere. It made the people flee in despair, shouting loudly, an invader, run, alert the night order. Amid the ruins and chaos, there were still those who stood up against the world's erosion, founding an organization that connected the strong to fight. The war erupted fiercely. The elite warriors on the front line were called the Azure Generation. Cross Sky recalled that time, and I had just, with a body that only sealed curses, I joined the Azure Generation. Though they were comrades in name, he was always despised, his body constantly ravaged by curses until he vomited blood. Crash jolted awake, his 13-year-old eyes widening in shock as he realized he had returned to the past. Crash sprang upright, his breathing ragged in utter bewilderment. He stared blankly around the luxurious room. This was his room. Yes, only moments ago he had still been standing on a freezing winter battlefield, and now the summer heat made sweat pour from him as if he had bathed in it. Crash realized he was in the Green Pie Manor where he had once lived in childhood. A sudden thought flashed through his mind. So that meant the final card I used, applying the black hat to Arthur, had successfully stolen his regression skill. Returning to the past, I still kept the memories of an adult. Sitting on the bed and gasping for breath, Cross raised a hand to his head, still stunned. But how was I able to steal it? People usually thought the black hat skill could be used freely, but in truth, it had a fatal weakness. The black hat could only take the target's item if the user could open its lock. A magical lock was created based on the value the owner assigned to the item. Even a roadside stone, if its owner regarded it as a treasure, would make the unlocking condition soar, such as having to transfer 99% of one's assets to the owner for a unique skill the other party cherished. The difficulty of stealing it should have been extremely high. The greater the value, the more numerous the conditions, and the harder they were to fulfill. Crash sat in thought, looking at Arthur. What was that man thinking? He recalled the moment the black had activated, but saw no lock appear at all. There had been no lock whatsoever, leading to an unbelievable truth. He truly wanted to abandon this skill. The man revered as the heroic King Arthur actually wanted to give up his regression ability. Was that why he had the chance to steal it? Thinking back, Arthur would sometimes reveal an exhausted expression, acting as though he were reluctantly carrying out a mission. In a world gradually heading toward destruction, if he had to repeat everything alone, had that man already gone mad inside his own tragedy? Acting as though he could save the world alone, that man certainly was no longer sane. Perhaps to Arthur, regression was a vow, so he wanted the other three to try the memories and regress together, while cruelly cutting me out. When I stole the skill with the black hat, the Arthur I knew lost his ability to turn back time, was left behind in the world on the verge of ruin, and died beneath the meteor rain of the Blue Death Night. Meaning that man had truly vanished, standing silently in the quiet room of the past. I thought to myself, I took away the thing you wanted to throw away most. So you should thank me, consider it my freeing their vow. Bitter smile rose to my lips. That man had always rejected me alone. He took it for granted that enduring that cruel curse was something anyone could do. That man had never cared about the comrades suffering in the darkness. Looking back at the memory of when I was gravely wounded and collapsed while they turned their backs, anger boiled up in my heart. Serves you right, you piece of trash, I muttered, a sharp chill showing clearly in the eyes of a child's body. Stepping out into the corridor of the Green Pie Manor, I realized how small my body truly was. Before leaving the room, I looked at myself in the mirror, only around 10 years old, with firm muscles despite my short stature. This was the result of days of harsh swordsmanship training to survive within the family, the strongest martial clan in the Derling Kingdom. He also had to train from childhood to have a body like this today, and if I was in Green Pie, it meant the age 10 ceremony had just ended. Crash pondered. This was the mandatory ceremony of the Vanhem clan, where each member proved their ability by revealing the god they had contracted with and the skill they had been granted. The more outstanding the contractor, the higher the god's rank, and the more secure their status in the clan. The main line of Vanhem had always received absolute reverence, but Crash was the sole exception, utterly lacking martial ability because no god had chosen him. After that, he was mercilessly expelled from the main mansion. He was sent to the Green Bay Villa, a place that was, in truth, a prison for confining the family's failures under house arrest. Standing by the window, Crash gazed into the distance with complicated feelings. Now, only I, the most talentless person in the Vanhem clan, knew the apocalypse in advance. This was the great calamity that even the renowned Asura generation had failed to stop. He wondered whether he could stop the end of the world. Stop whining, Crust told himself, his small hand clenched tightly into a fist. This was no longer a matter of whether he could do it or not, but something he was forced to do. The chance at rebirth would help him save the world. If the world perished, he would die along with it. There was no other choice. The 10-year-old boy's gaze turned cold and resolute. At that moment, footsteps rang out on the corridor floor. Young master, a voice rang out, making Crash turn back with a start. He looked at the man before him and thought, what are you doing here, and you are still alive? Arius was the sole butler of the Green Bay Villa. Crash stepped forward, grabbed the old butler by the lapel, and called out Arius. The man remained calm, bowed his head, and asked what was the matter, young master. In Crash's memories, Arius was the only person who cared for a failure like him, but reality was cruel. He looked straight into Arius's eyes, gave an unsettling smile, and asked directly, the poison my older brother gave you to kill me, when do you plan to use it? In the clan's arena, even the most elite knights were no match for that girl, defeated by only a few simple moves. She had brought down the entire team, sending them sprawling, unable to resist. The overwhelming power belonged to the young woman with long black hair and sharp eyes, dominating the entire battlefield. Charlotte stood firm amid the defeated, a majestic blue-violet energy radiating around her. She was only 15, yet everyone who witnessed it was astonished by her innate talent. The knights could not even come within a single step of her. The title of sword was not merely for show, and it was rumored that she was a once-in-a-millennium genius of the Vanham family. While everyone kept singing her praises, Charlotte merely glanced down coldly and said, "How boring." Entire family placed its expectations on her shoulders, believing that with the genius of the Sacklot bloodline, the Vanham line would endure forever. The family took pride in the talented girl, but behind the praise was the icy gaze of Varokin, Crash's half-brother. That man gritted his teeth, clenched his fists, and plotted to erase that entire bloodline. Though he regarded Sacklot as a threat, the easiest target to strike now was Crash, the useless failure. Varokin's eyes flashed with madness as he thought of eliminating his blood-related younger brother. In the dark room, Varokin sat across from Arius and declared coldly, "I intend to kill him." Before that, he had not hesitated to press hard on the old butler's pain to drag him into the crime. "You must be in dire straits, all because Crash threw your career into chaos." He took out a vial of poison shimmering with mysterious light. Varokin handed over a knife that was both tempting and cruel. "If Crash drinks one drop, all your debts and your daughter's health will be resolved." The other party hesitated. He already knew. He urged him, "What are you still hesitating for?" Arius trembled and replied, "Young Master Crash is like my own son. How could I do that?" Despite the pleas, Varokin still called his name coldly, like issuing a final order, threatening to use the weakness in his heart to force him to choose someone else's child over his own daughter. The false butler stepped back, his face contorted with terror. In that cruel memory, Arius had once ignored those feelings. But reality was even more painful when the grievous wound dyed the bowl of food red. Crash had once screamed in despair as he watched the person closest to him fall into critical danger. "I am truly sorry, young Master Crash," the weak final words rang out through Arius's broken breaths. Before Crash recovered, Arius had originally received the order to assassinate him, but in the end affection overcame reason. He said bitterly, "Young Master Crash was as precious as my own child, yet I did such a thing." Arius's hand fell to the cold floor as life vanished. Unable to bear the guilt, he drank the poisoned soup himself to end his life rather than harm the one he cherished, then quietly passed away before Crash's eyes. Returning to the present, Crash looked at Arius with eyes sharp as blades. "The poison my brother gave you to kill me, when were you planning to use it?" The exposure made Arius tremble, cold sweat streaming down as he stammered in horror. Crash gave him no chance to defend himself. "Are you planning to play dumb? Because of your daughter, you wanted to kill me, a failure. You think I did not know?" Crash's question left Arius with no choice but to bow his head in silence before the brutal truth. Seeing the butler's collapsed figure, Crash thought to himself that if he continued, he would drive him to the same dead end as before. He sighed and said coldly, "If you want to pretend, do as you wish." Before turning away, he left behind a bitter sentence. "If I had not been a failure from the start, you would never have accepted that order." Arius stood frozen before the young master's change, never expecting him to be as calm as an adult, rather than frightened or tearful. Crash walked away coldly, leaving Arius behind in a state of shock. The old butler wondered, has young Master Crash changed? He led him to the front of the vast study inside the mansion. Arius was bewildered, unable to understand why he had suddenly come here, then heard Crash call his name. Standing before an ordinary wall, Crash ordered coldly, "Cut down this wall." Arius was startled, but Crash mocked him. "If you are the butler of the Wanham family, this should be easy, should it not?" Unable to refuse, Arius bowed his head. "Of course, sir." He drew his sword. Once ready, he unleashed a powerful slash. The force of the slash carried a brilliant blue-violet stream of energy. The precise strike made the wall collapse, revealing a dark hidden passage. Crash nodded in praise. "Oh, what a clean slash." Arius was stunned. He had not known this passage existed either. "There is a hidden passage here." Ignoring the shock, Crash stepped into the darkness and even praised the butler. "Well done." Watching the young master's small back, Arius broke into a sweat, realizing Crash was completely different from yesterday. He used a night pearl to light the way, exuding a dignified air that recalled the powerful family head. They went deeper until they reached a door sealed with chains. Locked tight, Crash stood silently as old memories surged back. He remembered that the last time he came here, everything had already turned to ash. This time he had arrived in time before that happened. Standing before the door bound tightly by Sigma art threads, Crash steeled his resolve. Arius stepped forward and offered, "Young master, let me cut the chains." But Crash stopped him coldly. "No, you cannot break them." He wanted to use this chance to test his own strength. Dark energy erupted violently as he shouted, "Skill, Black Hat." A sinister hand with purple eyes and sharp fangs rushed from the void straight toward the chain. The force and power from the shadowy hand shattered the iron chain in an instant. Crash calmly caught the falling lock and assessed it. The skill's power is still intact. Alioth hurried over in panic to catch the heavy object and asked, "Young master, have you formed a contract with a deity?" Crash realized he had never formed a contract, so he lied to cover it up. "Yes, I just signed with a nameless deity." He calmly gave another order, "Report the matter of the library to Father." Arius stood silently, his eyes revealing shock at the young master's transformation. In his heart, he thought yesterday Crash's eyes looked like those of someone who had lost any reason to exist. Yet after only one night, he had transformed through a contract with a deity. Arius believed Crash had received a powerful skill because he carried the mighty Vanhem bloodline. He shared the same blood as the great genius Charlotte. He thought that even if Crash could not compare to Sacklot, the current Crash was no longer as incompetent as before. Arius swallowed and placed his hand over the left side of his chest. Finally, he bowed his head and swore the oath with utmost reverence. At least, until he completed the plan, I would not reveal this to anyone. Seeing the butler change, Crash quietly observed and realized an important truth. Therefore, this was the weakness of regression. Actions diverging from the past caused Arius to change as well. Nevertheless, his eyes remained vigilant when thinking of the man in front. The fallen figure of Arius in the past would always linger in Crash's memory. Looking at the butler, he wondered whether Arthur had ever faced this paradox, forcing himself to learn regression skills. Crash's gaze dropped, calculating. If he cured Arius's daughter, surely he would be loyal, and he should increase the number of pieces used while living here. Coldly turning away, he left the words "do as you wish" and decided to leave curing Arius's daughter for later, prioritizing the secret library for now. The heavy wooden door opened. A wave of blazing red energy, full of pressure, appeared. Crash froze as a colossal pillar of light and magical flames erupted fiercely from within, as if burning anyone who dared intrude. His eyes widened in awe at the grandeur and power of this place. He never imagined such a place could be destroyed to this extent. Even after witnessing countless worlds eroded, Crash still felt overwhelmed stepping inside. Surely that person's secret was here, he thought while observing the towering bookshelves, finally exclaiming, "Found it." This was the secret library of the Lin Song Pavilion, where ancestors deemed failures of the Vanhem clan recorded all techniques and memories. These were not just skills, but the great achievements of humanity, preserving manuals reaching the ultimate level. Initially, anyone could enter here, but because of one person, it became a secret library. That person was Damaris, once considered the worst failure in Vanhem history. But after being devoured by erosion, he returned and became the strongest. Smiling with ambition, he approached the light, Crash holding the blazing manual, whispering apologies to the ancestors for arriving late. Now all this treasure of knowledge belonged to him. Damaris, the name that once terrified the entire continent. He was once considered the greatest failure of the Vanhem clan, but also the strongest warrior to appear here. Standing at the peak of power, his presence was like a god of destruction, the strongest warriors allied to challenge him. But Damaris's absolute power allowed no one to stop him. He swept away all defenses, turning the strongest magical formations into flat land. The secret of this terrifying power was extreme blood poison, seeping deep into every vein. Damaris madly fused world erosion into his body and grasped the secret to controlling this cruel energy. He learned to use poison to counter poison, transforming it into strength. Crash held the manual, recalling his previous life. Half the book had been burned, leaving him ignorant of this ancestor's end. Did Damaris truly go insane from failing to control the chaotic blood poison within him? Recalling the curse attack, Crash realized he had used a black hat to balance different curses to survive. If the same principle applied, he could use one curse to restrain and control the chaotic blood poison. The image of the spirit snake and the fierce Scyther clashed and exploded within the radiant light, blazing, proving the convergence of opposing powers being subdued. Crash concentrated, dark energy gathering between his hands, forming a sphere of immense pressure. Large, he smirked confidently, believing with this method, he could surpass natural limits, rivaling Damaris. Desire blazed in Crash's heart as he called the butler's name, Arius. He coldly issued the supreme command. "No one is allowed into the Lin Song Pavilion." Arius bowed in obedience. "Yes, I understand." From the moment of the oath, the butler was absolutely loyal to him, walking along the magnificent corridor, silently deciding to repay the favor for Crash overlooking his mistake. He resolved to reject the cruel offer from young Master Verokin. This news hit Verokin like a bucket of cold water, making him roar in fury, tearing up documents. Unable to believe Arius dared refuse the invitation just for Crash. He looked at the papers praising genius Sacklot, enraged at being stuck between a genius and a failure. He thought, if not for Crash's bloodline, then he and Lilith would have claimed their rightful place in the clan. Verokin gritted his teeth and called his subordinates, ordering the Lin Song Pavilion to investigate the butler's change of mind immediately. Yet, the subordinates trembled, reporting the shocking truth: "We cannot enter inside." Verokin froze hearing the answer. Crash's butler Arius had sealed the entrance, forbidding everyone, even the head of the family, from entering the Lin Song Pavilion. Outside the gate, Arius stood firm with his sword, sharp eyes ready to block any intruder into the master's territory. Forbidding even the head to enter, Verokin was shocked and enraged at the audacity of a former failure, unable to understand why Crash was so valued. In the secret library, Crash sat in meditation, dark purple energy blazing around his small body. He sighed in relief, finally, reaching the initial stage of a Kai expert. According to the hierarchy, Ki had many levels like Emperor Ki, Master Ki, Kai Expert. Crash had officially entered the Ki Master stage, the initial state for a beginner using energy. Stage 2 was Kai Expert, Common, but also the harsh boundary separating ordinary and genius. Crash had just touched the threshold of an ordinary person. Meanwhile, Charlotte, only 2 years older, had already reached Keymaster, her talent monstrous and abnormal. Even genius Sacklot had once knelt helplessly before it. The world's ruthless destruction in the timeline. Compared to Sacklot, Crash felt he was still just an amateur, wondering if at this speed he could save the world. He brushed aside doubts, not knowing if he did not try. Complaining was useless. In his previous life cursed countless times, unable to use Qi. Now everything was different. Though not matching Sacklot's innate talent, Crash still believed that with persistence, he would eventually break through. He held in his hands the secret manual left by the failed Damaris. Every idea in this book he would slowly learn and absorb. He could absolutely grow stronger. Crash's eyes glimmered with confidence as he thought about a future full of power. He withdrew the dark energy coiling around his body, telling himself this was enough for now. Immediately after, the gym door slowly opened. Arya stepped in, holding a towel, bowing respectfully. Master, congratulations on entering the early stage of the expert realm. Crash calmly accepted the towel and replied, nothing worth mentioning. More importantly, why were you waiting in a place like this? The butler feigned delivering news that stunned him. Your fiancée, Miss Bianca Hardenhatch, has arrived at King Song Pavilion. Crash froze, eyes wide with shock. Bianca. In his memory, even as a leader, she had been turned into a pawn by those who wanted to destroy the world. She had also defeated one of the 10 celestial generals to claim the proud title of White Demon. Currently, she was only the youngest daughter of the Haydenhaas family, but this marriage carried political implications. The Valheim clan had the chance to push away a useless failure, while Haydenhaas used it to bond with the strongest martial clan. Crash bitterly realized both were being used by their families, like pawns in the schemes of two clans. Even so, he smiled calculatingly. Actually, I also have business with Bianca. Unexpectedly, she took the initiative to come all the way here. Bianca, the youngest daughter of the Northern Lord's family, was born with a cruel fate. Because her mother was affected by the world-eroding curse before giving birth, Bianca was born without feeling. The curse clung deep to her soul, to the point that exorcism magic could not dispel it. With a tainted body, she could not even form a pact with divine. She was treated as a child carrying a curse, born through her mother's life. Bianca had always been met with cold and indifferent treatment by the Hardenhaas family. Crash pondered, wondering if Bianca hated him, but he quickly dismissed the thought. As long as she didn't obstruct stealing Bianca's curse, it was fine. Seeing Crash still standing, Arya said anxiously, dressed like this, it's not suitable to go out. I'll prepare a change of clothes immediately. Crash responded with a mysterious smile, forgetting he was still just a young teen. Outside, fiancée Bianca stood silently, silver hair pinned with a snowflake clip, her expression indifferent, awaiting the meeting. Years ago, in a fit of anger, Crash had once shouted straight at Bianca. Vanished. He looked at her with hatred and insult. She only cared about the power of the Valheim clan. The only response to his dismissal was the cold slam of a door. Bianca left quietly, her mind occupied with a single thought. I never wanted to come here anyway. She recalled the heavy pressure from the Haydenhat family, where relatives forced her to sacrifice herself for the greater good. They told her to use her attractive face to win over the young master, and Bianca understood that harsh truth very clearly. Deep down, she was certain that if not for this political marriage, she would never be involved with someone so foul-mouthed, negative, and failing like him. Meeting him again now, he would probably only scold her as before. Back in the present, just stepping into the room, Crash shivered, recalling how badly he had treated her. To break the heavy atmosphere, Crash scratched his head awkwardly. Such hot tea doesn't suit someone with sensitive taste like her. He took the initiative to change his attitude, his voice becoming gentler. He invited, today's weather is nice. Let's take a walk in the garden. There are many northern flowers that cannot be grown there. Bianca responded briefly, agreed. Crash then instructed Arius to bring macadamia cookies to the garden, and the butler bowed in acknowledgement. Bianca, it must have been hard for you to get here. Crash spoke as they walked through the splendid corridor. He smiled politely and continued, after all, we are engaged. Such meetings are quite necessary. Bianca walked silently behind, wondering. Crash teased, you speak as if facing a superior. Bianca noticed something was strange. Last time Crash's gaze was as cold as a blade. Today he knew she liked macadamia cookies. Stepping into the garden, Crash stretched, inhaled deeply, then exhaled, phew, truly peaceful. His unusual demeanor made Bianca wonder, could he really be Crash? Could it really be Crash? He noticed her suspicious gaze and wondered if he had changed too much from before. Suddenly, a thin but sharp pressure radiated unintentionally from Crash, making Bianca startle in fear. Frightened by the pressure, Bianca quickly bowed her head in apology. I'm sorry, Master Crash. I overstepped. Crash panicked, cursing himself for not meaning to scare her. His memory of this moment was too hazy. But one thing he remembered clearly, Bianca's current expression was exactly like the day she collapsed before the iced sea mansion. To ease the situation, Crash scratched his head, smiled, and decided to lie. It's no wonder you are suspicious of me. He excused himself while Bianca only responded mechanically, congratulations, young Master Crash. Sensing the moment was right, Crash looked straight into his fiancée's eyes and said, then I have a proposal for you. This, Bianca repeated in shock. A a proposal she could not believe someone with divine power would need her help. A negative thought suddenly flashed through Bianca's mind, making her turn pale. Could he be breaking off the engagement? Seeing her frightened expression, Crash could only blurt out, "Why would you think that?" Crash hesitated, lowering his head as if humbling himself. "What I mean is, if you do not want to marry me, if you want to break off the engagement, please just say so." Bianca looked at him, her heart heavy with thought. He is lowering himself again, even with Vanheim blood. Why is Crash so lacking in confidence? She looked straight into his eyes and said firmly, "I will be your fiancé." "Master Crash, that will not change." Crash froze at her firm declaration. It had been so long since he heard words that sincere. Crash thought inwardly, an unfamiliar warmth spreading through his heart. He cleared his throat to steady himself. "I see. Then let us get to the main matter." So she was afraid he would break off the engagement. Crash's gaze turned sharp, purple-black energy flaring over his scarred hand, newly awakened. "Do you want to hand over the curse that even expert dispellers are helpless against?" Bianca froze, unable to believe what she had heard. "He wants to take the curse that cannot be dispelled." Crash nodded in confirmation. "I need to use it. If you agree, I will grant any wish, even destruction." Bianca fell into thought, realizing that the curse of emotionlessness had given her an advantage. She knew Crash had always been regarded as a failure and was surely in fierce conflict with the main line. Looking at Crash as he was now, Bianca told herself that perhaps he had been too exhausted that day for things to become like this. So exhausted he wanted to erase his emotions completely. She remembered what the Mind Mage had taught her when she was young. When people reach their mental limit, they collapse before an illness of the heart. That old warning surfaced clearly in her mind. Once afflicted, they may end their own lives or suddenly become gentle, as if they had turned into someone else. He warned that it was an extremely dangerous moment, a sign of a sorrowful ending. "Bianca, if someone close to you falls into such a state, stay by their side." Thinking so, Bianca concluded that he was in that state, then suddenly gripped Crash's calloused and wounded hand. She looked at him with a resolute gaze and comforted him. "It will be all right. I believe you can overcome this. Crash only needs to control his emotions, not rely on the curse." Bianca's words left Crash confused and he stammered, "Huh?" Bianca seemed to have misunderstood something, but despite Crash's confusion, she continued, "From now on, I will visit you often. If I ask my father, I may even be able to move nearby." Crash was stunned. "Why are you saying that?" "Wait, you do not hate me. You do not truly want this engagement, do you?" Bianca gripped his hand tightly, her gaze firm. "Even so, I cannot abandon someone standing on the edge of hardship." Crash realized she had not denied that she did not want the engagement, but once she made a decision, she would carry it through to the end. He thought to himself, perhaps she had misunderstood everything far too seriously. Realizing he could not obtain the curse immediately through persuasion, Crash decided to try activating the secret skill. Purple-black energy enveloped Bianca as he shouted, "Black insect cap skill." Immediately a magic circle appeared, opening the condition to steal the curse from her. Her curse had been locked. First condition, become Bianca's friend. Crash frowned. A double lock, how troublesome. Because this was as a curse Bianca had carried from birth, it was considered part of her body and valued extremely highly. This was even harder than becoming her fiancé. Bianca had no emotions and rarely took interest in anything. Crash worried that if he sent her back to Hayden Hat, she would become the White Demon. So he decided to keep her by his side, both preventing the transformation and finding a way to seize the curse, gaining two benefits at once. "That makes me very happy. I am grateful to be able to meet my fiancé often." Crash suppressed his calculations and smiled in response to Bianca's proposal. The girl nodded lightly. "I will confirm it with my father and return. See you again." Crash watched Bianca's figure disappear into the sunset. Thinking he would have a month to read more books on secret arts, he exhaled softly. "Phil, things are about to get busy." However, the very next day at Green Bay Mansion, the sound of moving things shattered the silence. Crash stared blankly at the men carrying large crates into the house. "Greetings, Master Crash." A familiar voice rang out, making him start. Bianca stood there amid the wind and falling leaves, calmly saying, "Starting today, I will live at Green Bay Mansion. Please take care of me." Crash stood frozen, eyes wide with shock. She plans to live with him. What she said yesterday was true. How did she come back so quickly? "Bianca, are you sleeping here again?" Crash sighed when he saw his fiancée sleeping soundly in the room, thinking to himself, others will misunderstand if they see this. He had just let out a long yawn. Bianca drowsily opened her eyes, looked at him, and greeted him. "Good morning, Crash, but why are you here?" Crash grew angry and snapped. "I should be the one asking that, Bianca." Time passed, snow blanketed the estate, and amid the bone-piercing cold, Crash still trained relentlessly until sweat poured down his body, brilliant blue energy burning around him. He slowly reflected. It had been several months since he began living with Bianca. The memory of the first day she moved in remained clear in his mind. Bianca standing elegant and cold as she declared, "Starting today, I will live in Kingsong Pavilion Hall. Please help me." "Help." Crash stared wide-eyed in astonishment and stammered, "You have already moved in." She answered calmly. My family agreed immediately. There were no obstacles at all. Looking at the girl, Crash felt worried and thought, will she be all right having to move out like this? She is only 12, or does she also not want to stay in a house that is always trying to abandon her? He realized that because Bianca had no emotions, her bond with her family was fragile. She also did not understand sadness or loneliness. But Crash comforted himself. Perhaps it was good, since he wanted to become her friend. The relationship between the two passed strangely, like a mother hen and a chick. Wherever he went, she followed, looking truly adorable. Back in the present, Crash braced himself and trained, energy surging fiercely, realizing she had moved in during summer, and now it was already winter. The year was almost over, meaning the start of Lionel Academy was drawing near. This was a place jointly established by the four great kingdoms and the empire to train talents against the erosion of the world, accepting only students from 15 to 20 years old. Before Crash returned to the past, this place had trained countless members of the Asura generation with high-grade skills. Crash gritted his teeth, vowing that once he enrolled, he would steal every skill from those bastards one by one, because he understood their weaknesses better than anyone. In his previous life, they tormented him like enemies, and now they were about to pay the price. Next year, Crash would turn 14, meaning he still had about 1 year to prepare, and he had to become even stronger. Yet he realized his own talent had reached its limit when the magic books only brought him to the elementary expert aura level. To overcome the barrier, Crash knew he had to seize. Take Bianca's curse as soon as possible, and learn how to use extreme blood infusion. As soon as he left the training room, Crash saw Bianca already sitting there waiting. He asked, waiting out here again today? She answered frankly, yes, I will not leave you alone. Since summer, she had followed him like a shadow, to the point that Crash asked in irritation whether she intended to follow him all the way into room 8. Bianca still asked innocently, was that not allowed? Crash only sighed, wondering when Bianca would finally see him as a friend so he'd complete his goal. He changed the subject. Do you want to go out for a walk? Just then, the butler entered and reported, young master, an invitation has arrived from the Star Temple. Crash repeated in surprise, the Star Temple. It was an annual formal party for the young nobles of the Durling Kingdom, a place where they met and expanded their connections. In truth, the nobles mostly went there to flaunt their wealth and parade their influence. Crash held the invitation and murmured softly, I now remember. Thank you for reminding me, Arius. In the previous timeline, because he had shut himself inside the purification hall, his memories of this event were rather vague. Even so, he was certain that Verokin would appear there. Crash's gaze darkened, and he decided to attend in order to keep his promise to Arius. He thought to himself, this way, that man will no longer have an excuse to repeat the tragedy that once happened to the old butler's daughter. Crash handed the letter back to Arius and said firmly, tell them I will attend. Bianca, standing beside him, immediately spoke up, I am going too. As they walked down the splendid corridor, Bianca looked at Crash anxiously and said, the people attending the Star Temple will surely criticize you. He looked at his fiancée and replied in a low voice, yes, but who knows what they will say about you. Perhaps you had better not go. Faced with that concern, Bianca looked straight into his eyes and said resolutely, no, I will go with you. Crash smiled faintly. He reached out, stroked Bianca's head, and said protecting her fiancé is also a fiancé's duty. Realizing he had joked a little too much, he hurriedly corrected himself. I am not asking as your fiancé. I only want to hear your true thoughts. Bianca. Bianca froze for a moment at that gesture, then once again met that familiar pitying gaze. Over the past few months, Crash had always treated her kindly in a way she could not understand. From asking what she wanted to eat for breakfast, choosing books with her in the library, and even staying awake all night to watch over her as she slept, gently reassuring her, do not worry, I am not going anywhere, sleep a little more. That warmth was something Bianca had never had in the cold Haydenhouse family. Watching Crash devote himself to sword training beneath the moon, she realized his kindness had made her nearly forget the frightening first meeting between them. In her heart, Bianca told herself, that is why I no longer hate Crash. She looked deep into his eyes and repeated, I will go with you, not as your fiancé, but as myself. That is how I truly feel. Crash froze at that unexpected sincerity. He only managed to answer softly, I understand. The carriage began to roll, carrying them away from the manor beneath the brilliant sunset. When the magnificent castle appeared before his eyes, Crash looked through the window and murmured, so this is Gararyu. It really is the most famous place in the region, and they even rented out the entire venue. Just how rich are they? Crash could not help being amazed by the grand scale of the party. The nobles lived in luxury, spending money like water. Crash thought pensively, they are respected because they fight against the erosion of the world in place of commoners. Yet before his eyes was only a crowd absorbed in partying, with no concern for training. Crash bitterly wondered whether this was Starin's future. The moment they entered the hall, an announcement rang out. Lord Crash Van Heem and Lady Bianca Hardenhaus have arrived. Immediately, malicious whispers surrounded them both. Was that the failed child of House Van Heem, and the girl bearing the curse from the northern family too? What a match made in heaven. The hypercritical nobles looked at them with contempt. Some even reminded one another not to look too long, lest they be infected by Bianca's curse. Amid the noisy crowd, Crash recognized several noteworthy figures, true nobles who would later join the Asia generation. First was Balakopma, known as the Young Tiger, with a sharp gaze. Next was the spirit Amelia, who possessed blazing red eyes full of mystery. And Aniclimax, a masterful wielder of the wooden bow. Those three were the famed Starin trio, now fixing their contemptuous gazes on him. Crash knew they had noticed him, and the cause was surely Charlotte. He remembered Charlotte once saying that her gorgeous red dress had made that group keep coming over to strike up conversation. In the end, none of them could beat her in a duel. Charlotte had once called this place a garbage temple in disgust and vowed never to return. Looking at the atmosphere now, Crash was certain his older sister had once caused no small commotion here. Suddenly, Bianca gently tugged at his hem and spoke to comfort him. Lord Crash, do not mind what others say. Crash was briefly stunned, not expecting the girl who had just been so harshly insulted to be worrying about him. He stroked Bianca's head and smiled. I do not care at all. I was only thinking of Sacklot. Just as he wondered when that man would appear. Speak of the devil, another announcement echoed through the hall. Lord Durling has arrived. The one with the strangest style among the nobles appeared with a smile. A radiant smile and an excited wave. Hello there, everyone. That was the renowned chief alchemist Durling. As he placed no importance on appearance, that man dressed in a very eccentric manner. He recalled his previous life when Durling had looked in astonishment at Crash's body, covered in traces of curses, and exclaimed, Heavens, your whole body is covered in curses. What made you end up like this? That man rubbed his chin, murmuring calculations with an excited look. How fascinating with this kind of erosive curse. What if I could combine this with that? And it seems feasible. Immediately afterward, Durling excitedly made a mad proposal. Hey you, do you want to become my test subject? In exchange, I will heal you. A dazzling light flared as Durling forcibly cast a healing spell, leaving Crash only able to shout, Stop, are you insane? Stay away from me. That man deliberately provoked Crash for amusement. That was Durling, lord of the renowned alchemical castle, and also the first time Crash met again the man who would later be called the world's #1 alchemy king. Durling strode into the banquet hall with an extremely confident air, waving as he greeted everyone excitedly. That man's appearance immediately caused many mixed reactions. The young ladies cried out in admiration, Lord Durling is still wonderful today, while several nobles mocked him as a freak who had deliberately arrived late to attract attention. Crash watched from a distance, thinking to himself that a show-off like that man would naturally choose a crowded place of his peers to appear. He turned to Bianca, who was focused on eating, and instructed her, Bianca, wait for me here. The little girl obediently replied while chewing, yes. Crash walked away quietly, heading straight toward Durling, making the alchemist lord take notice and wonder, who is that boy? Who is that? He had a feeling he had seen him somewhere before. Crash's sharp eyes fixed on that man. Durling saw Crash approaching, stared for a moment, then exclaimed in surprise, Indeed, he looks just like Sacklot. He curiously asked whether Crash had something to say or was merely drawn by his appearance. Then his tone became serious. Recently, it seems you have been gathering information about the world's erosion, right? Crash remained unshaken, a challenge curling on his lips. I say so. I wonder if that makes you more interested in me. Durling smiled slyly. Indeed, a boy who likes to provoke. Since you have sparked my curiosity, prepare yourself. He led Crash into a secluded room. While admiring the swords, he asked his age. Hearing that Crash was only 13, Durling remarked, Though young, the aura he exudes is entirely different. Crash sighed bluntly, I do not have much time. I want to go straight to the main point. Drawing his sword, he replied coldly, Go ahead. Suddenly, Ling threw a sword toward Crash, a playful invitation here, catch it. Just as Crash managed to catch the weapon, Lin lunged with incredible speed, both focusing to challenge each other with precise sword strikes. Struggling to parry the consecutive strikes, he roared in fury, What the hell are you doing? Durling calmly pressed and explained, I just wanted to test Sacklot's brother's skills. Enough, Crash gritted his teeth in resentment, truly an annoying man. Before the fierce duel, Lin still urged, By the way, do you have something to discuss? I am listening, speak. Crash assumed a stance and replied, that thing. The sword in Crash's hand clashed sharply with Dolin's weapon. Watching the opponent defend, Durling mocked, Aren't you the skill is failure? Crash gritted his teeth, replying calmly, Outwardly perhaps, but I train every day. In his mind he quickly calculated, should he use his secret take against this alchemist or shock him a little? Suddenly Grass released an enticing smell of resin. I am researching ways to nullify curses. It could help you. The statement left Durling stunned. What? He pressed with sharp sword strikes while probing. What do you know about alchemy to demand collaboration? Crash dodged dangerous kicks while confidently explaining his method to nullify curses, something even mages have not cracked, but another curse can counter it. Derling did not expect a failure like Crash to understand alchemy so well. He realized that to become a alchemist, one must prove their research work. He lowered his stance, serious gaze, I will help you research. At that moment, a strong black aura erupted, enveloping Crash's small frame. He declared confidently, arrogantly pushing forward with my skill of stealing curses. Witnessing this, Lin was completely stunned, eyes wide in shock. Isn't he the inept failure? He thought, if what Crash says is true, this is the perfect opportunity to complete his research. In excitement, Derling grinned mischievously and asked, what should I do to repay you? Become my boyfriend perhaps. Crust shuddered, immediately rejected. What the hell are you saying? This guy is strange in dress and personality. He went straight to the main point, requesting Derling use his talent in brewing to make a potion that eases the curses to be collected. Crash thought relying only on the curse-stealing skill is not enough to survive in this harsh world. Even the Asura generation, with extraordinary skills, cannot prevent the world's destruction. Crash understood more than anyone, a failure like him must use every means, potions or anything else. Facing Crash, Lin carefully observed his cold expression and silently assessed. I heard you lost motivation being compared to Sacklot, but not so. He realized he was facing an overwhelming genius and a true oddity. Both Van Hem sisters astonished Derling. Crass broke the tension with a question. May I ask something? Derling curious, what? Hearing Crass inquire about his intention to attend the soon-to-be-established Rayhan Academy, Derling could not help noticing. Looking toward the majestic academy, Truss smirked, scheming, all is ready. In his mind, he stirred a new plan with sufficient skills to steal at the academy, most importantly, moving freely. Derling was excited, unable to hide his enthusiasm. Fine, I will do anything, brew potions or anything else. He affirmed regarding curses, always ready, while claiming a spot beside Crash. Seeing his zeal, Crash thought this guy had not changed, always the same. He suddenly shifted to a serious matter. You know about the discoloration disease, right? It is a fatal disease that turns the skin blue-black and leads to death. Crash looked at Lin, ordered make a cure for it. Derling froze, surprised, He reacted violently. You do not know what a fatal disease means. Even I find it impossible. Crash remained calm, knowing that in the distant future, Derling himself would complete the remedy. He clenched his fists, looking at the alchemist with eyes full of trust. He knew he could do it. The words stirred pride in Derling. He smiled faintly, hearing you say that, you touch my pride. He had successfully provoked an attention seeker. Crash and Derling bumped fists, confirming their pact. Crash instructed, when the potion is ready, remember to contact the pine cutter. Lin replied enthusiastically, okay, I will personally deliver it to you. But Crash suddenly paused with a long-standing question. You like Charlotte, right? Derling did not hide it, shouting excitedly, I love Sacklot very much. Crash was still unconvinced, asking about earlier when Derling mentioned the empty spot beside him and brought up a boyfriend. Derling blushed, explaining, because Crash is still young and does not understand fully. Then suddenly admitted, I also like boys, can love both male and female. Horrified by the confession, Gruss shouted, but I do not. Then immediately ran off, ignoring Lin calling after him, wait, future lover. Running and gasping, Crust thought, turns out this alchemist is that type of person. Turning to the banquet hall, he froze at a sight that made one's skin crawl. A man was rudely gripping Bianca's wrist. Despite her trembling in pain Bianca glared at him with a mix of fury and helplessness, silently calling Crash's name. While he was away, had she been bullied to this extent? Without hesitation, he charged forward and delivered a powerful kick straight to the head of that nobleman. Kick sent him flying before he crashed to the ground. The man clutched his head, groaning in pain. Dark energy flared around Crash, his face darkened with rage. He growled in warning, dare to touch my fiancée, what do you want? Before that fury, the man trembled violently, stammering forcefully. Crash looked at him with utter contempt. Fine, I'm coming. The cowardly nobleman only managed to utter that before hastily stepping back at Crash's fearsome presence. Not giving him time to recover, Crash coldly declared that instead of meeting the second princess, he would seek Aniclimax. The man blankly asked why, but Crash had already guessed the truth behind it. He warned that no matter whom he served, he had already absorbed enough vices from his master. Crash decisively called Bianca to leave, leaving him dumbfounded on the floor. A brat daring to imitate his master to tease a good girl. Walking down the luxurious red-carpeted corridor, Crash pondered why Bianca dared refuse the princess's order. Based on experience from his previous life, he could easily guess who was pulling the strings. What puzzled him was that at 12, Bianca should not have been sophisticated enough to grasp the complex political situation at this time. Crash stopped and softly called Bianca. He looked straight at his fiancée and asked why she had not obeyed the prince's order. Bianca lowered her head, silver hair slightly covering her face. She sincerely whispered, because you, Crash, told me to wait. That innocent yet trusting answer made Crash pause for a moment. He smiled gently, ruffling her hair before walking on with her down the corridor. Well done. With Anicap's assistance, Crash and Bianca reached the large door and stepped into the room behind it together. But as the door closed, Aniclimax could not hide his excitement, blocking their path and speaking up. "I've been curious about you too, Crash. Fight me around." Unexpectedly, he was another oddity no less. Crash suppressed a sigh of annoyance, not expecting it to come to this, a fight in the sanctuary. Anik continued to provoke, "You've fought Charlotte, so fighting me is fine, because Crash is weaker than Charlotte." At that moment, Crash recalled the rumors about this man. When fighting Charlotte, he had lasted longer than Aparax, a master slightly above him. What was frightening about Arnix was his unpredictable combat sense, leaving opponents unable to anticipate his next strike. Crash initially wanted to avoid combat, but seeing his burning, eager gaze, he understood it would be difficult to refuse. Crash coldly accepted very well. Immediately, he unleashed precise, magical energy, preparing to engage in combat. The extremely fast attack struck, but he barely flinched. He nimbly dodged, fingers clenched to a tight fist. A punch imbued with the dark energy of a curse instantly sent him flying backwards. He could only clutch his stomach, too pained to speak. Crash stood firm, silently looking down at the defeated opponent. He groaned, "Crash, you are merciless." Crash coldly adjusted his collar, replying briefly, "You challenge me first." Despite his pitiful state, Aniclimax still pleaded, "Yes, but wait, can I fetch my weapon first?" Crash sneered and asked, "A weapon, huh? More importantly, can you even stand?" Aniclimax tried to rise, but his body was completely spent, and he collapsed to the floor, utterly powerless. Seeing that, Bianca curiously asked, "Crash, what exactly did you do to him?" Crash calmly explained as they walked, "I used a secret family technique of the Vanham clan, the 1-inch punch. This technique, created by someone once deemed a creative failure, maximizes damage over the shortest distance. If conditions are met, it can even damage internal organs." Thanks to the 1-inch punch, Crash had survived many life-threatening situations, including the time Tangtong Pavilion caught fire. Crash looked at his hand and affirmed, "I used a rather powerful move. Therefore, he probably cannot sit up immediately." He signaled Bianca to enter, leaving Aniclimax sprawled on the ground, muttering hopelessly. Stepping out onto the balcony under the bright full moon, Crash suddenly froze when he saw two strangers already waiting. He exclaimed, "Bal," smirked mysteriously, "How funny that you defeated Breckwood." Crash remained unmoved, immediately exposing his plot. "You only used the second princess to lure me here, right? If you were waiting here, then I have arrived." Dill feigned surprise at being seen through, mumbling, "How did you notice? Strange, you are nothing like the rumors. Perhaps the rumors were false. Thank you all for following this video." He extended his hand radiating dark energy forward, coldly declaring, "If you lose to me today, the rumors will change, for I will take your skill." Nick Rush froze on the balcony. That man was none other than Aniclimax. In his heart, Crash bitterly recalled the time they had once fought side by side. From the days at the academy to joining the Azure generation together. "You were once my friend, having been together so long I know you well. But beneath that friendship lay a bitter truth. You befriended me only while I was useful. A selfish, traitorous person, playing with me to exploit me." The memory of that fateful day surged like a nightmare. Amidst the ruined battlefield when his comrades had fallen, Crash struggled to cling to a cliff, panting desperately in despair. "Has everyone been taken down? Aniclimax, are you there? Help me." At the desperate cry, Aniclimax merely stood above, cold eyes sending shivers through everything. He calculated bluntly, if they discovered he had led someone into a trap, his position in the Azure generation would be lost. But if he survived alone, no one would know a thing. Aniclimax's cold declaration left Crash utterly stunned. Even standing on the brink of death, he shouted, "Hey, do you think it's that easy? The internal civil war has been fierce. You will certainly be expelled for this." Yet Aniclimax merely smirked slyly. He had devised a cruel plan. "No matter, I will lay all the blame on you. Because you are hated, they will believe me. The truth of this matter will be buried." He bent down, speaking false farewell thanks. Crash, for being my friend to the very end. Saying that, he left without looking back. Amid life and death, Crash felt his strength drain, hands smeared with blood slowly loosening from the cold rock. Could it be that I end here? A desperate thought flashed through his blurred eyes, when suddenly a hand gripped him tightly. Arthur appeared like a last-minute savior, asking if he was okay and quickly pulling him up from the abyss. Now Crash recalled at that time Arthur saved him because they were on the same team, but it was also the start of a long string of tragedies. After the incident, Aniclimax was expelled from the Azure generation thanks to Arthur's testimony. Crash had been angry seeing him attempt to marry the desperate princess, but upon meeting Aniclimax again, he realized he had not changed. Aniclimax smirked, "Crash, your face and manner of speech are very much like Sacklot." Words struck Crash's pride. He was furious. "Do not casually speak her name. You compare me to her? Fine." Dark energy from the Black Hat skill burst around Crash as he prepared to enter battle. He said coldly, "Yes, just like her. I never back down from a fight." Before Aniclamax's calm gaze, Crash dashed like a dark phantom, launching a powerful attack. A giant tree suddenly rose from the ground as a sturdy shield. Crash reacted swiftly, stomping hard on the trunk, twisting to grab a branch for momentum to charge forward. Confident in his superior strength, Aniclimax looked down arrogantly as the giant trees rushed at Crash. Even though he tried to dodge, still caught by roots entangling his clothes, in midair before falling beside Bianca, suppressing a frustrated sigh. he muttered, indeed troublesome. Phoenix smirked triumphantly, roots twisting like venomous snakes. He proudly displayed the Gleiser family's wood techniques, using aura to manipulate plants, combining plant propagation recovery skills, easily compensating for technical limits. Aniclimax taunted, is that all? Better use weapons. Crash candidly picked up a dry branch from the ground and replied, you want me to use weapons? And I will use your own wood against you. Seeing Crash challenge with a branch, really? Then try to block this with your branch. Aniclimax roared, commanding a barrage of trees like a storm. Yet Crash amazed him by dodging all attacks perfectly. Aniclimax was astonished, wondering how a supposed failure like Crash could have such reflexes. He began to suspect whether Crash had awakened eye power, superior senses meant only for geniuses like Sackla. Crash's eyes flashed with mysterious purple light. Crash thought, with you I am like a natural rival. Previously he had seen through Anic's abilities from a prior timeline. When the opponent was distracted by Sacklot, Crash struck with a strong branch attack, pushing Anic back. Insulted, Aniclimax roared, Crash, you should watch your words. He immediately used his fifth skill, Heaven and Earth Colossus. A gigantic wooden entity with a fierce face emerged. Each strike intended to kill Crash. Aniclimax grinned maliciously. He looked down on Crash, uttering threats. From now on you must be careful. That moment a girl rushed over, face panicked. Sir Aniclimax, you must not do this. She knew well if the devastating strike hit Crash directly, the consequences would be irreparable. Giant wooden punches from the Colossus radiated terrifying pressure, ready to crush everything beneath. Facing imminent death, Crash calmly closed his eyes, letting leaves scatter around him. In his mind, the image of the thin manual lying still in the secret library of the Linsong Pavilion appeared. The author was an ancestor without innate talent, person who repeated mundane strikes throughout life until 80. The brief manual recorded the simple strikes of his final years. Yet because he had been repeatedly cornered by curses, Crash understood the ancestral manual was not as simple as written. The sword is me, I become the sword. Crash swung the dry branch in his hand, merely seeing it as a sword. This simple truth created boundless power. A vertical slash would obliterate the monster. Giant wood startled the opponent. Colossus shattered into pieces. Witnessing that scene, Bianca and everyone around her stood frozen, their eyes wide with astonishment. Aniclimax trembled, his face deathly pale, his limbs weak and unsteady. Sweat poured down from fear when he saw his strongest skill neutralized so easily. Crash stepped forward coldly, looked straight at the one prostrating on the ground, and warned him, hey, never act arrogant again. Crash calmly tossed away the dry branch and watched Aniclimax collapse completely beside the balcony. After that unexpected defeat, he only managed to let out a sound before falling, leaving everyone stunned. Crash stood there breathing hard. Sweat dotted his exhausted face after the tense battle. He cursed inwardly, damn it, I meant to conserve just enough strength to steal the skill, but I poured everything into one blow. And now I can barely move, damn it, I can hardly even speak anymore. His legs trembled and his consciousness faded from exhaustion. Just then, Bianca and Durling rushed over to help. Bianca called out anxiously, Crash, let me help you. Durling suddenly grabbed Crash, making him cry out in pain. Seeing his condition, Durling hurriedly said, at this rate Crash will die, leave him to me. Bianca nodded in agreement. Thanks to them, the coffin was used to carry Crash on its back. The nobles' murmurs spread throughout the banquet hall. Oh, what is this? Did that failure really beat Aniclimax? Unbelievable. The useless youngest son of the Van Hem family actually did it. As they took Crash away, they silently thought the rumors were spreading too fast. Those who had once looked down on him now had to see him with different eyes. He believed that when Crash woke up, he would surely become the center of attention throughout the kingdom. However, a sense of unease arose in that fake Kim's heart as he recalled the defeated man's gaze. Aniclamax's earlier expression irritated him, and he had a premonition that something ominous was about to happen. Beneath the full moon, Durling carried Crash on his back while reminding him, hey kid, you are not allowed to die until you cooperate with me on research, understood? The scene shifted back to Crash's grueling training days at the manor, when he had to face gigantic logs hurtling at him from every direction. Josh braced himself against the painful impact, his eyes still blazing with determination to surpass his limits and prepare for the upheavals to come. A week had passed since he returned from the sacred spirit land at the manor. Sweat soaked his small back. He breathed a sigh of relief, finally recovered from that day's battle. Thinking about his confrontation with Aniclimax, Crash realized that if he had pushed that man to the end back then, he might have ended up worse than him. Fortunately, he had restrained himself in time. Crash suppressed a regretful sigh. If he had not fainted then, at least he would have had time to prepare to steal the skill, because he had two methods to steal an opponent's skill. One was to unlock the Black Hat skill, and the other was to make the opponent undervalue the ability they possessed. With Aniclimax, Crash had planned to use the second method, which was easy to execute if he completely overwhelmed the opponent. That was why Aniclimax's strongest move had been defeated in a single blow, causing doubt about the skill's value to spread. Once he began doubting himself, his spiritual defenses would weaken. He would no longer value the move that had failed. Though it would take some time, Crash believed Aniclimax's recovery skill would eventually belong to him. In the remaining year before he officially entered the academy, he planned to train every day to surpass those geniuses. However, the sound of the door opening cut through his thoughts, and butler Arius entered with a respectful yet grave expression. "Young Master Crash, Lord Verroken has arrived." Crash smiled faintly, knowing Verroken had run out of patience after being refused 22 times. Unable to delay any longer, Crash ordered him to invite that man in. Arius bowed in obedience and withdrew. At that moment, Bianca stepped forward and thoughtfully handed him a cup of water. "Crash, please drink." He accepted the cup and thanked her softly. Bianca asked with slight concern, "You are sweating so much. Is something wrong?" Crash flinched, inwardly wondering what this smell was, whether it was waste from Aura, or whether his nose had grown too used to the scent of world erosion from his past life. Now he no longer cared what happened to his body. Seeing her fiancé's awkward look, Bianca tactfully asked, "Are you not going to bathe before meeting Verroken?" Crash clicked his tongue and ignored it, deciding to keep moving instead of worrying about his appearance before an enemy. Bianca turned away sulkily, leaving him with a look full of amusement. He thought to himself, daring to order her fiancé around. "Bianca, you have really grown up." Looking at her small figure, Crash thought of a penguin puffing up its feathers in anger. Unable to resist the urge to tease her, he chased after Bianca when he saw her run away. To Crash, she was like a little sister, making him want to tease her. Yet amid those rare peaceful moments, memories of his past life suddenly returned like haunting ghosts. Crash fell into thought, a trace of sadness in his eyes as he remembered those he knew before returning to the past. They must have looked at him coldly. Though he lived in the present, the sorrowful past still haunted his mind. In his mind, Arthur's figure appeared majestic yet cold, as if standing before him in accusation. "Have you grown weak because of peaceful life, and you think you can stop the world's destruction?" Crash spoke unconsciously, Arthur silently admitting the bitter truth. From the final moment of betrayal, that man had always been the vanguard hero, never once letting down his guard. His thoughts were interrupted when Crash wondered, where is Arthur now, and what is he doing? Just then, a mocking voice rang out from behind him, "Flirting with your fiancée? Are you? How fun." The one who appeared confidently was Verroken, the third son of the Van Hem family. Everyone needs to relax. Evaluating him inwardly, the one who had once feared him so much he did not dare look him in the eye now dared to stare straight at him. Verroken was still half doubtful about the rumor that Crash had defeated Aniclimax. Crash took the initiative and attacked with words, "By the way, you are so busy, yet you still have time to go chasing women." Verroken froze, stammering as he repeated it, not understanding Crash's implication. Crash continued his psychological attack. "I heard Ryan Academy admit students by exam regardless of status. So you should prepare too, big brother." The provocative remark made Verroken's face change with shock and anger. Is this guy provoking me? He felt his pride deeply wounded, because the Van Hem family stood so high that even the mighty empire had to show them caution. As a member of the direct bloodline, Verroken regarded having to take an entrance exam as the ultimate humiliation. He gritted his teeth, telling himself Crash should not act superior just because he had defeated Aniclimax. But to save face, Verroken forced a fake smile and replied, "You are only joking." His mocking tone belittled Crash. "It is only natural for failures like you to worry about failing the academy." He deliberately provoked his younger brother to push Crash into a corner, but contrary to his expectations, Crash answered directly, "Right, I suppose so." That made Verroken flush with anger at Crash's careless attitude. Suppressing his anger, Verroken went straight to the point. "Today I came to deliver an order." Crash frowned in suspicion, while that man coldly announced they would stop the world erosion at Mount Gorilak. The news left Crash stunned. What was this? Family missions were never compulsory for those under 15. To force his younger brother into a difficult position, Verroken pretended to reassure him, "Do not worry, I will go with you as your guardian." That man leaned closer to Crash, provoking him by saying that someone who had defeated Aniclimax surely would not fear such a minor matter. Seeing through the other party's intentions, Crash understood that he merely wanted to test his strength and find a way to restrain him. Without the slightest hesitation, he accepted the challenge. "Fine, if we are going, then we go." To Crash, facing world erosion was far more familiar than his current peaceful life. He clenched his fist, believing that even if this was Verroken's trap, he still had a way to deal with it. Just then, Bianca appeared, anxiously asking where Crash intended to go, and he told her not to follow because he would be away for some time to handle the erosion. Bianca asked sadly, "Am I not allowed to go with you?" Seeing that scene, Verokin found it utterly unpleasant. That man inwardly mocked how absurd it was for a 13-year-old child to go stop world erosion, then hurled an insult at the cursed princess. Crash immediately stepped in front of Bianca, snapping that she was his fiancée. He even mocked him a chivalrous elder brother, like you would not take the words of a 12-year-old child seriously. Would you? It was no different from slapping Verokin directly in the face. Their gazes clashed, tense as a drawn bowstring, and Verokin gritted his teeth in fury before storming off resentfully. Crash gently stroked Bianca's head, softly praising her for doing very well. Before the little girl's bewildered look, he said her presence itself had helped him greatly. Bianca looked at him with eyes full of worry and pleading, "Please do not collapse again." Crash only replied softly, "Yes, I am leaving now," then turned away decisively. The world was being encroached upon by another dimension, creating a terrifying phenomenon that caused eroded creatures to appear and the environment to distort abnormally. If the erosion continued to spread, that area would completely transform into another world. At Mount Gerlach, a swamp region had formed and was classified as a 3-star erosion zone. Crash stood among the knights in a dark blue uniform, coldly asking for news from the purification team. Though he was the youngest, he remained focused on the mission, and a soldier reported that they would begin once the master of this region was eliminated. With a 3-star erosion level, this was a challenge that a mid-level professional knight squad could handle. Verokin, a high-ranking expert, was certainly strong enough to defeat the master of this eroded region without much difficulty. That man called Crash over, then calmly said the purpose of bringing him here was to let a beginner expert gain more experience. Experience, Crash merely answered indifferently, but inwardly he could not help sneering at his elder brother's condescending attitude. Who does he think he is talking to? Crash thought inwardly, his gaze turning cold. There was only one reason he had followed someone as overbearing as Verokin. It was to test a temporary method for controlling his own frenzy. A true battle broke out when hideous eroded creatures were struck down beneath powerful slashes, opening a path for the troops to advance deeper into the swamp. Screams rang out amid the monsters swarming around them, causing the soldiers to start panicking. "Damn it, at this rate we will never wipe them out. Their numbers are completely overwhelming." Crash spoke up to guide them about the headless, tooth-filled monsters, telling everyone to cover their whole bodies with aura, because if they were bitten, the wound would swell immediately. A soldier asked in surprise, "Master Crash, could it be that you have experienced world erosion before?" Crash calmly replied that he was only 13, so having entered an erosion zone before would be absurd. However, the calmness of someone once regarded as a failure made Verokin suspicious. Why was he so calm inside an erosion zone, even though this was his first time? The memory of when he was 55, when his pride had been crushed in this very place, returned like a bitter reminder. Yet how could he calmly give advice to the knights like that? Verokin stared fixedly at Crash, his heart filled with doubt. That man realized his younger brother's calm was completely different from his own first time entering an erosion zone. Looking at Crash's back as he silently advanced, an extreme hypothesis began to take root in Verokin's mind. That man trembled as he wondered if Crash grew up like Sakla and surpassed him. Would he not be the true failure of Vanim? He feared that the one left behind would be himself. Crash abruptly stopped, calling softly, "Elder brother, we are about to reach the place where the master resides." Verokin struggled to keep his composure, smirking as he said Crash was lucky this time was easier than his own first time. Seeing that there were no eroded creatures around, that man thought only the master remained. Crash immediately warned, "Precisely because of that, we must be even more vigilant." He explained that a 3-star master capable of maintaining an eroded region alone could not be underestimated, causing the knights behind them to begin wavering. Seeing the soldiers' morale shaken, Verokin shouted, "Do not let yourselves be swayed just because of a child's words." That man ordered the whole squad to quickly deal with the 3-star target, so they could return soon. Crash silently watched the hasty group, thinking that they would soon realize the truth for themselves. He focused on what he needed to do, his sharp eyes sensing the eroded energy surging beneath the ground. Thanks to the poison that had once seeped deep in his blood before regression, Crash realized his current senses were even sharper than in the previous timeline. Now he only needed to swallow it. Crash held the bowl of medicine, his heart pounding as the decisive moment arrived. "See you again." He decisively drained that dark liquid. Immediately, intense pain crashed over him, making his eyes turn red and his veins bulge in a terrifying way. Crash sank to his knees, coughing blood before everyone's stunned eyes. A panicked knight rushed over to support him, asking if he was all right. He wiped away the blood and lied that he had only tripped. Verokin pitifully offered to carry him, but Crash coldly refused. No need. Looking at the blood on his hand, he understood that the eroded energy was ravaging his body like a deadly poison, but he had no choice except to endure. Why was he harming himself like this? This was precisely why Crash had trained beforehand to let deadly poison seep into his blood. Following the secret manual, he began merging aura with eroded energy, forcing the flow of aura to circulate continuously. He imagined it as a great river silently absorbing and harmonizing with erosion, creating a new shade of power. Even so, the consequences of the frenzy were extremely severe, making Crash's eyes streak red and his body tremble without stopping. He coughed up blood again. Looking at his blood-stained hands, he told himself that an ordinary person surely would not have endured it. It was time to use that secret manual. He recalled the history of Kingsong Pavilion, a place that had once been sealed off and gradually forgotten after Damaris Vanim disappeared. Later, a blind ancestor accidentally discovered the hidden archive, but because he could not see, he could not read the secret manual and had to lock the place away. To prevent anyone from repeating his tragedy, that ancestor left behind a single secret manual that could be taught without the need for eyes, and Crash had received it. Aura erupted fiercely around Crash, marking the awakening of a superhuman sense capable of perceiving even the smallest vibrations through aura. It was none other than the sixth sense. At present, Crash could only expand his sensory range by about one finger joint, but that was enough for him to notice the abnormality directly beneath where he stood. Crash's eyes widened, a fierce smile appearing on his blood-stained face as he clearly understood his true situation. It's not that the world is engulfed in madness, but our senses are shifting. Crash's perception became sharper than ever. He realized the madness was thinning thanks to practicing the ancestor's sixth sense manual, but it was only a temporary measure. Continuing to absorb the eroding energy, he could lose control at any moment, just like overtraining to the point of insanity. At that time, he still needed Bianca's curse to maintain his mind. Though a makeshift solution, it still allowed Crash to control his power. He clenched his fists, feeling for the first time that he had reached a new level. Yet a sudden chilling sensation struck. Crash's eyes widened in shock, spinning around as he sensed a presence full of pressure behind him. From the darkness, a horrifying creature emerged, its body seemingly patched together from countless human parts. Its elongated neck and grayish face became visible. Eyes that had been shut flared open, glowing with terrifying red. It was a massive, deformed mass of flesh, covered with pained faces, enough to make the faint-hearted faint at the sight. That was the master monster, screams of panic echoing in the dark space. Monster roared, revealing a wide mouth full of fangs, its body covered with grotesque faces. Witnessing the scene, Verokin was completely frozen, his face pale with fear, unable to speak. Crash was also shaken by the appearance of this powerful and terrifying entity. Information confirmed its identity: Senganki, the thousand-faced demon. It was the master of a third-star eroded zone. Facing the giant monster exuding lethal intent, a firm voice rang out, "Everyone, prepare to fight." Preparing for battle, the shout echoed, urging the knights to draw swords in unison, ready to face danger. In the dark, eroded zone, Verokin focused his energy, causing his treasured sword to glow a brilliant blue. Immediately, a violent heat erupted, enveloping him in red flames. The Ignis skill transformed Verokin into a powerful flame warrior. Those accompanying him could not help but marvel. Verokin's Ignis flames were always formidable, and their destructive power was terrifying. Contrary to the cheers around him, Crash stood still, his eyes reflecting hatred as he watched the flames. He bitterly recalled in his previous life, Ignis had burned his arm, with Verokin stepping on him, spitting disdainful curses. Watching the arrogant back of Verokin stride with his sword, flames, Crash muttered his name coldly with murderous intent. He knew Verokin had gone mad over regression in the past, but now Crash was no longer a child for him to bully at will. A mysterious dark purple energy erupted, enveloping his body as the Black Hat's skill activated. Eyes and a grotesque mouth appeared on Crash's hands. He smirked, hoping you haven't changed at all. Immediately, the ground shook violently with pained groans, a bizarre entity crushed and deformed by purple energy. The knights truly began to panic witnessing this scene. Terrifying was that a curse that stole faces. Chaos ensued as the monster stretched its 8 massive arms. The dark arms attacked frenziedly, smashing the surroundings. Even the elders struggled to defend. Young soldiers trembled in despair. How could novices like us avoid this curse? The battlefield chaotic, some wanting to fight, others to flee. At that moment, a roar drowned out the space and attack. Verokin in Ignis state lunged at the monster like a missile. Flaming slashes tore along the horrific body of the thousand-faced demon with terrifying heat. They left blazing streaks across the dark swamp. Observing from afar, Crash was astonished. Was he targeting the thousand-faced demon instead of attacking him? He squinted, carefully following every violent movement of his elder brother. But the situation became strange as the faces on the monster began leaking dark fluid. Crash froze, exclaiming, "Blood tears!" Dark blood flowed from deep eye sockets, creating a horrifying scene. Something was wrong. If it continued, it would be very dangerous. This fluid would soon engulf everything. Despite the frightening sign, Verokin still crazily charged attacks. He continuously delivered blazing strikes. Flames covered the opponent's massive body, but the monstrous pressure suddenly erupted from the creature, making Verokin pale. I must focus on defeating the thousand-faced demon now, before another anomaly appears. Verokin muttered to himself, the Ignis flames on my sword flare. He dashed like a rocket and roared, all knights, take down the thousand-faced demon. Before him the soldiers stood frozen like statues, faces sunk in eerie shadows. Verokin stammered in utter panic, what exactly are you? A horrifying thought flashed, the curse of the thousand-faced demon? He trembled, touching the deforming face. The giant monster with its gaping fanged mouth loomed above, looking down on him like death. The scene suddenly shifted to a dark forest under pouring rain. At that moment he collapsed onto the waterlogged ground, breathing heavily from sheer terror. Not good. I'm about to be killed. The boy tried crawling in vain, mud covering his small body. At this rate, he would die. Behind him, a gigantic grotesque hand radiating dark purple energy reached out, ready to crush him. Why is this happening to me? Die? I, the strongest in Valheim, must die? Amid the blinding rain, a familiar figure appeared behind, coldly mocking. Because you are a fool. Surpassed by a younger sister less than 3 years younger, boasting and losing the entire night squad, and now fleeing to save your life, truly foolish. Since you failed so miserably, the price you must pay is your life. Those insults seemed to tighten around him, leaving Verokin's mind almost suffocating, and he was crushed by the giant hand of the thousand-faced demon. That man only had time to scream in despair. At that moment, that man collapsed in both mind and body. Beneath the torrential rain, the one who had once been arrogant was now reduced to a wretched sight. That man crawled through the mud, with not the slightest trace of dignity left. Blood mingled with rainwater on his wounded face, and he looked up, his breath broken, asking in despair, you are... Before him, Crash appeared with an oddly calm expression. Verokin was stunned. Crash, why are you here? You are still alive. Crash curled his lips and answered indifferently, you are awake. Yes, I have been watching everything from afar this whole time. He explained that when he saw his older brother swallowed by the swamp after the thousand-faced demon's attack, he had secretly pulled that man out. Verokin forced down the pain to preserve the last shred of his pride. I am fine. I can walk on my own. Crash looked at his trembling eyes and inwardly sneered, with a body that cannot even use aura. Crash stepped closer, extending a hand to support him while asking mockingly, are you truly certain you do not need to lean on me? Verokin gritted his teeth in anger and slapped away the help of the younger brother he had always despised. I do not need help from an idiot like you. Even after his crushing defeat, that man's pride had not vanished. He braced his treasured sword against the ground, but his trembling hands and exhausted body only allowed him to stand with difficulty amid the blinding curtain of rain. Is the thousand-faced demon still nearby? Verokin asked anxiously. The man wanted to know how far they had left the scene. Crash only replied indifferently, who knows? They had been walking for quite a while, but still had not found a way out. Perhaps this erosion of the world had formed an enclosed space. Crash thought to himself, could it be that they had to defeat the thousand-faced demon before they could leave this place? Verokin collapsed to the ground, gritting his teeth and cursing in despair. Crash looked at his devastated older brother and called softly, brother. He suddenly revealed, actually, I have a secret technique, passed down by Charlotte. He asserted that he had been able to face Aniclimax in the Spirit Holy Land precisely because of that secret technique. Verokin froze, unable to believe his ears. Saklot's secret technique. His heart was shaken. Even someone as cold as Saklot paid special attention to this younger brother. The man looked at Crash suspiciously and asked, do you think that secret technique can bring down the thousand-faced demon? Crash looked straight into his older brother's eyes and answered confidently, it can. He could not defeat that demon alone, but if his younger brother fought with him, there was still a chance of victory. Rather than avoiding the thousand-faced demon and exhausting ourselves in the eroded zone, I think this method is worth trying. Crash stood proudly in the rain, trying to persuade his exhausted older brother. He knew very well that Verokin had never trusted him. Therefore, he struck at the key point. But brother, at least you trust her skill, do you not? Verokin was silent for a moment, then admitted yes. After all, Saklot is still a genius. That man forced himself to stand, pulled his sword from the ground, and gave one final warning. If we fail, both of us are finished, kid. Crash curled his lips into a smile, powerful black-purple energy flaring around him as he declared firmly, you can rest assured, I absolutely will not fail. The thousand-faced demon is approaching. Crash whispered, his cold gaze fixed on the enemy drawing close through the torrential rain. He turned to his wounded older brother Verokin. Are you ready to cast Ignis? Verokin suppressed the pain and nodded, yes, ready. Flames began to surge in that man's hand. Crash said decisively, then let us begin. He stepped out from the bushes and closed his eyes to gather all his focus. Suddenly a brilliant and pure blue aura erupted. It enveloped Crash's small body and his sword. Witnessing that scene, Verokin's heart pounded in astonishment. That man blurted out in shock, what, this focus is terrifying. That man stared at the translucent aura he had never seen before, clearly sensing the absolute purity radiating from it. Deep down, Verokin was stunned as he admitted it. When Crash told him to combine the Ignis flame with Saklot's secret art, But at this moment his own eyes saw everything clearly. That man could not understand why the aura he had trained for years still eluded control, while Crash wielded it with ease. Brother Verokin. Crash's call pulled him from his tangled thoughts. You should use Ignis. Verokin stammered in response. Alright. Breaking free from his thoughts, Verokin focused, channeling his flames into Crash's sword. Two fierce powers began to merge. The treasured sword transformed into a blazing pillar of fire in the night. Crash gripped the hilt tightly, looked straight ahead, and asked quietly, "Is something wrong, brother?" Crash turned to ask while inspecting the sword. Seeing Verokin still stunned in amazement, he calmly continued, "It's fine, don't worry. Seems I have time. I don't need your help anymore." Verokin was struck dumb by the unbelievable confidence of the younger brother he had always underestimated. What? Looking into those blazing eyes, he realized in horror that the flames from Crash's sword were fiercer and purer than his own. Verokin trembled, admitting they were strong enough to destroy the thousand-faced demon. In an instant, humiliating memories surged back when he had lost all subordinates and fled after a disastrous battle. Blind confidence had led him to that fate. A fierce jealousy rose. Verokin wondered if Crash could truly defeat this monster. Could he lose even to a failure? At that moment, Crash dashed like a blazing lightning, swinging his sword for a decisive strike at the demon's twisted body. A towering column of fire erupted immediately. The unbearable heat consumed everything around. Verokin stood frozen, sweat streaming down his distorted face, because the shock of witnessing the mighty being completely annihilated was too great. The eroded area disappeared, the sky gradually returned. A clear blue covered the lush grass under the radiant sun. Crash stood proudly amid the peaceful scene, turned to his brother and said casually, "Brother, I've dealt with it." Instead of gratitude, Verokin's expression darkened with resentment. Easy. That much. He gritted his teeth and hissed. Suddenly he drew his sword and lunged to strike Crash from behind, screaming madly, "Then die." But Crash was faster. He spun to block the strike, leaving the traitor stunned. He had anticipated Verokin's counterattack. Verokin panicked, realizing he could no longer use Ignis at all. He didn't know that all his power had been devoured by Crash's black-purple energy. "Thanks, Verokin." He spoke coldly and bitterly, because his brother had not changed at all. Everything had been part of Crash's plan to unlock the Black Hat's skill with Verokin. Conditions for theft were simple yet cruel. The opponent must willingly hand over Ignis, believing the other would wield it better, then collapse completely in pride. The moment Crash swung his sword, all of Ignis' power officially belonged to him. Verokin screamed in utmost agony as his core power was stripped away. Crash looked at the man who had tormented him, now kneeling at his feet. He was Verokin, a grudge from the past life to this one, and he would reclaim everything piece by piece. Childhood memories of abandonment surged back, when poor Crash once longed for harmony with his brother and family. His goodwill was met with venomous rejection, as if not to meddle, or you can't do anything. Verokin's hostility had shattered all chances for reconciliation. Crash's gaze was sad yet resolute as he stared into the void. He mocked his own naive hope that being siblings meant acceptance. In the end, Verokin still wanted to kill him. Verokin now curled on the ground, his breath uneven, looking utterly pathetic. Crash coldly bent down and asked, "Does it hurt?" "A lot." He recalled the past hatred, when Verokin had mercilessly burned his arm and face, causing agony like the man suffered now. Crash decisively turned his back, leaving the defeated man groaning amidst the ruins. He curled his lips in a bitter smile. Ironic. Today the sky is so beautiful. Verokin's entire team wiped out. The shocking news left the main Van M mansion in disbelief. The recently destroyed, eroded area was rated 5 stars. Only high-level experts could suppress it. Amid whispers of doubt, an angry man shouted, "So what? Only that failure survived." Immediately, the mansion's steward coldly stopped him. "Mind your mouth, servant." Verokin had sacrificed himself to protect his younger brother. We must honor that noble sacrifice. It seemed everyone had seriously misunderstood who the true hero was. Standing amidst the funeral, Crash calmly observed all. He thought, they believed the testimony, so I needn't worry about suspicion. In fact, with Verokin gone, this mission yielded results beyond expectation. Crash had now fully adapted to that extremely bloodthirsty poison. He also confirmed that the sixth sense could somewhat control the frenzy. Especially with the recently stolen Ignis skill, he possessed new power called Black Flame. The mysterious black-purple fire surged on Crash's hand, capable of incinerating everything. Reaching the essence of world erosion, the result was Black Flame, a trump card stronger than he had imagined. Though the color looked frightening, others could not see it, so Crash felt completely at ease. Yet, the remaining issue in the family was investigating the abnormal phenomenon in the eroded land. Who caused it without leaving a trace? Entering the meeting room, Crash heard a call. "Come in." He knew the truth behind these phenomena was due to world invaders. The true body of an immortal slept in eternal slumber, only observing reality through subordinates. Their actions meant Crash could encounter the immortal's subordinates at any moment. Upon entering the room, he met Saphira, a 4th-rank investigator of the Erosion Survey Bureau. She announced, "Mr. Crash has arrived. We were waiting for you." Immediately, Crash noticed something unusual on her neck. A black star was visible there. "Didn't expect we would meet this early." In the face of Saphira's arrogance, Crash coldly raised his hand and spoke, "Hey, you immortal. I want to negotiate with you. In exchange, I will erase that immortality." His gaze locked onto the opponent, then he dropped a line that shook everyone. "Speak. You are a false regression, right?" Saphira froze at Crash's blunt question. Saphira's face twisted, eyes blazing red, and a grotesque smile forming as the entity inside spoke. "I am searching for another destination, but it seems fate has led me astray." Before that reversal of time, under Arthur's orders, he had tried to steal the immortality of that man but failed miserably. Memories of his body shackled by magical chains surged back. At that time, the immortal could only self-recover, unable to control subordinates. Saphira in memory murmured, because the real body was cursed into immobility, he had to deploy so many underlings. Sounds pitiful, doesn't it? Immediately, Sigrunifania angrily shouted, "Pitiful, huh? Have you forgotten he already escalated the erosion zones and brought disaster upon us?" Sigrunifania continued scolding, telling her not to pretend to be noble, causing Saphira to respond awkwardly, "My lord Sigrunifania, I had no such intention." She could only silently endure Sigrunifania's wrath. Even though the matter with the immortal seemed closed, reality was far harsher. The past Crash smirked when asked about stealing power, then admitted, that's right. No matter how many times he reincarnated, that matter was still deemed impossible. The reason was simple: the Black Hat's skill unlocking immortality required being stronger than the immortal, a barrier Crash could not surpass at that time. Returning to the present, the entity occupying Saphira's body grinned wickedly and asked bluntly, "Tell me, you are a false regression, right?" Crash calmly countered, "False regression? Huh, what makes you think I am a false regression?" The entity sneered, "The moment a child dared propose a deal with someone like me, you revealed yourself. Only a false regression would dare do that." It looked down on the boy before it, trapped in an endless loop, still daring to claim he would end an existence beyond time. It clutched its face, laughing madly. "Do not make me laugh with such blatant lies." Crash let it laugh freely, then slowly spoke, "This is not what you think." "Lying," Crash said coldly, simultaneously extending his hand radiating dark purple energy forward. A grotesque mouth with sharp teeth appeared in his palm. Crash explained that with this special Black Hat skill, he could steal even immortality. Hearing this, the entity in Saphira's body fell silent as memories of centuries of solitude arose. It admitted that for hundreds of years it had upgraded each erosion zone just to find someone capable of ending its life. And now the one who could steal the final vow of immortality finally stood before him. It trembled, asking Crash what conditions he wanted. Crash replied frankly, "Help me become stronger." He explained his skill only activates when he surpasses the target. The entity smiled in satisfaction and decided, "Then I will take you as my disciple." It was ready to do anything, even sell its soul, just to escape this cursed immortality. For it, being unable to die was the greatest horror. A blazing red murderous aura erupted. The entity revealed its true identity. "I am Crimson Garden August, the one who will make you the strongest." Behind him, a projection of a colossal fiery god appeared, pressing Crash to brace himself. He was astonished to realize the mere presence of that projection could overwhelm everything around. Crash knew Crimson Garden once wielded power on par with Arthur, and commanded countless fearsome subordinates. He told himself with its help, he would have a chance to grow stronger to protect the world from the brink of destruction, even if he had to borrow strength from a terrifying being. But a troubling truth suddenly appeared in Crash's mind. By the laws of time, the regression skill he stole from future Arthur had now returned to Arthur in this life. This meant Crash no longer had the initiative to reverse time. If the world perished again in this era, everything would truly end. He only had one chance left to save the world. If this place collapsed, he would disappear with it. Crash stared at his trembling hand. Meanwhile, Crimson Garden August in Saphira's body only smiled enigmatically, pleased that finally someone would accompany him. Crash blinked, repeating the unfamiliar name Crimson, but immediately he received a painful strike to the head. Saphira growled, "Crash, call me master." Rubbing his aching head while walking down the corridor, Crash sighed, "Fine, now I can leave." Crimson asked if he didn't live here, and Crash admitted it had been years since he last set foot in the main mansion, almost forgetting his parents' faces. Passing through the magnificent Valkyrie Hall, a servant suddenly blocked his path, saying Lady Arya wanted to see him. Crash guessed that his mother was curious about the rumor that he had changed, thus wanting a meeting. Not only that, the servant added news that stunned him. The clan leader said after returning from the Forbidden Zone, he wanted a private meeting with him. Crash asked in shock, "Father wants to see me." He knew very well his father was a fearsome being who had reached the demigod realm. Why did both want to see him this time? Could it be curiosity that this son had matured? Crash wondered if his father sensed something unusual in him through the stars. Even though Lady Arya wanted him to stay in the main mansion, he thought of Bianca waiting at home, and many other important matters. Not wanting to waste time here, he asked to confirm, "So this is not a direct order from father, right? Then I will leave first." While the servant was shocked, Crash decisively turned away. "When father is ready to meet, I will return." Or perhaps he himself will come to me. Crash thought so as the carriage began to leave the mansion. Lying back on the seat, he yawned with relief at finally escaping that confinement, then promised himself he would not return soon. Suddenly Crimson appeared, scolding, "Maintain some manners, disrespectful disciple. Open the door." Crimson, "Don't you think that glaring red is too conspicuous?" Crash frowned at the bright red crow perched on his shoulder. Crimson casually changed its feathers to jet black, then smugly replied, "Rest assured, I can change colors whenever I want. See, now I am no different from an ordinary crow." He even mocked that he was as black as Crash's soul, making Crash angrily shout, "I must soon obtain your vow." While they teased and jabbed at each other, Crash suddenly asked about Crimson's true form. Crimson sighed, scolding him as a petty false regression for deliberately touching the pain of its immobile body. Crash thought Arthur was the true false regression, and he merely borrowed a faint copy of that skill, but he decided not to explain to Crimson. When the two returned to Kingsong Pavilion at sunset, Crow suddenly reminded Crash to treat the white-haired girl inside kindly. Crash turned back in shock, his eyes filled with confusion when he saw the girl, and in front of him was Bianca in an outfit printed with a cute little bird. The girl hugged the book tightly and said gently, "Welcome back." Crash laughed inwardly, full of smug satisfaction toward Crimson. "See, I told you I would come back." Just then, the butler Arius hurried over to report that a letter had arrived from Durling. Crash opened the letter curiously, nearly left speechless when he saw Durling boasting that the medicine was complete. Color-changing cure, always thinking of you, along with a bright red kiss mark on the paper. He reminded Arius to be extremely careful with Durling, because he was their future benefactor. Arius bowed, then gently revealed that Bianca had been so worried she had planned to drive the carriage to the mansion herself as soon as she heard the news about the erosion zone. Grace stared silently at Bianca, never expecting that she would worry about him with such sincere affection. He wondered inwardly, how long has it been since I last checked the seal on her body? Suddenly, purple-black energy erupted violently from the hat. A magical lock appeared, requiring him to become Bianca's friend. When their eyes met, a radiant notification appeared, confirming the first condition. Bianca's first lock was released, leaving Crash astonished. Crash stood frozen, his eyes wide as he looked at the notification from the Black Hat skill. The first unlock condition, become Bianca's friend. Everything happened so quickly that he was stunned, wondering inwardly, had Bianca's first lock already opened? Bianca asked blankly, seeing him stare at her, "Is there something on my face?" He answered awkwardly, "No, I just wanted to introduce you to a new friend." Crash brought out the crow Crimson and introduced him. "His name is Crimson," which sounded much softer and friendlier. Bianca hugged the crow to her chest and murmured, "Crimson, he is as soft as whipped cream." Looking at the peaceful scene, Crash smiled, "So you like animals too, Bianca?" His words proved that the two of them had found a new common ground. The real trial had only just begun. A second lock appeared, purple words clearly showing the condition. Become someone important to Bianca. Crash analyzed, usually important people would be parents or children. He told himself, in theory I am her fiancé, so becoming her lover should be the easiest. But he immediately grew worried about whether he could become the lover of the emotionless Bianca. Moreover, her soul already belonged to a seasoned adult. Flirting with a 12-year-old girl made him feel awkward. At that moment Crimson spoke, subtly teasing him. "It seems that little girl likes that person. She keeps following him around, so she must truly cherish that person." When Crimson teased him, he could only stand there in embarrassment. In any case, Crimson's voice shattered the quiet night air. Crash wondered, "What is it?" The Crimson Crow burst out with an angry aura and said coldly, "I want to test your strength. Playtime is over. Go to the training ground." Crash froze, then nodded fine. On the training ground, the earth lay shattered, and Crash was sprawled out, panting in a state of complete exhaustion. Crimson sneered, "How pitiful, a regressor like you has such wretched talent." Crash bitterly admitted, "I really am a failure." Crimson emphasized, "You only made it this far thanks to past experience and my secret manual. But every effort will soon be surpassed by true geniuses in less than 5 years, if we speak only of pure talent," Crimson said as he hovered. He radiated a powerful crimson pressure that enveloped the surroundings. Space. He affirmed that pure talent held no value before Crash, because he possessed his own special skill. If he lacked talent, he could simply borrow it from others, and Crash still had many ways to grow stronger. He promised to help Crash rise, to seize everything from the peaks that surpassed the clouds. And in the end, even his immortality. Crimson manifested as a red-haired demon with long, majestic horns right behind the crow. Crash sat on the ground, looking up at the powerful being before him. His gaze was resolute as he declared firmly, "Of course." A few days later, at Green Bay Manor, Erling suddenly appeared, his face beaming. He jumped up and called out loudly, Hey, have you been waiting long, darling?" While tirelessly training with the sword, Crash replied irritably, "Since when did I become your darling?" Ignoring his cold attitude, Derling remained cheerful and went straight to the point. Anyway, you brought what I wanted. When asked about the thing he had just refined, he happily handed it to Crash. It is done. This is the newly completed medicine. He wondered, what do you think? So I really am a genius, right? Crash answered bluntly, why ask? You have always been a genius. Those words made Derling freeze in emotion. Then he rushed over and hugged Crash tightly. He snapped, stop that right now. Derling suddenly changed the subject. I wanted to tell you this. I heard Razor has changed. He stopped training after losing to Sacklot, but started again after the incident at the Holy Land of Spirits. Crash thought carefully. Was that traitor inspired by him again? But he dismissed it outright. Damn it, I do not care about Razor. If you are done, go home. Crash knew Derling had many other targets besides Vam, and at that moment, the Crow Crimson spoke. No. It is fine, I was originally planning to use a spirit elixir to strengthen your frail body. Ask that alchemy star to brew a spirit elixir for you, and that half-man, half-woman fellow will have work to do again. This is a special medicine that increases physical stats and aura, extremely expensive and usually passed down through family secret manuals, reserved only for a few people back then. I did not even dare dream of it. Seeing Derling still teasing him, he shouted, hey, what are you doing? The Crow Crimson urged, I know the formula, just let him follow it. Crash immediately changed his mind. I have one more thing to ask of you. I need you to brew a spirit elixir for me. Derling paused. You were telling me to go home just now, were you not? The news about Razor excited him, and he worried whether Crash had enough ingredients, because the Vanham family certainly would not help. Crash looked straight ahead, his gaze determined. Do not worry, I will manage it. Using his knowledge from before the regression, he could fully accomplish it. Grass silently calculated in his mind before deciding to create the legendary elixir, allowing him to quickly gain extraordinary power. Under Crimson's guidance, he followed along as Crash began listing the ingredients needed for the elixir. Lin stood beside him, eyes wide with astonishment. Amazed, he kept jotting notes in his notebook. So this is done with that, then that, huh? He exclaimed in admiration. Wow, where did you get this information from? Crash replied candidly, this is the Vanheim family's secret manual. Derling nodded in trust. Indeed, it is a true Vanheim heirloom. Excitement quickly gave way to worry. Derling looked at the book and sighed. I want to try, but how can we get the ingredients? He listed the hardest to find items, thermal frost mushrooms and golden dragon herbs, nearly impossible to access. Derling explained that thermal frost mushrooms only grow in Haydenhuis, the high, treacherous, and eroded mountains, making them almost extinct. Hearing that, Crash thought of asking his fiancée. Her family lived in Harden House, and realized Bianca was the key to the first ingredient. And asking about golden dragon herbs, Derling explained it was a legendary herb growing only near the golden dragon's nest in Bianca's remote area, nearly impossible to obtain. He hesitated to suggest buying from the black market, but Derling warned if the Empire discovers it, it would be troublesome. Illegal trading of rare items always carried severe penalties. Crash crossed his arms, determined, if there is no other way, I will hunt down the black market dealers myself. At that moment, Lind raised a finger excitedly, pointing out a better method for him. What do you think? Isn't this idea brilliant? Grazum tensed, you forgot? I am a Vanheim. The Empire could exploit the tournament, and a Vanheim appearing would throw everything into chaos. Derling winked mischievously, handing over a pink potion. Of course there is a plan, let this genius handle it. He, drink up. Then he handed the potion to Crash. Crash looked at the potion in his hand suspiciously. What is this? Transparent like this. Must I drink it? Without further thought, he drank the entire potion. Immediately excruciating pain made Crash scream. When the light faded, he was shocked to find his body transformed into a young girl. Long hair, slender figure. Crash yelled in horror, what the hell is this? Derling chuckled, explaining, anyone can participate in the tournament as long as their identity is hidden. You just need to participate as a girl. Enraged, Crash grabbed Derling, roaring, change me back right now. Even Crimson remained silent, eyes blazing red with embarrassment, only noting that he had drunk hastily without suspicion. Crash's fury erupted, eyes glowing fiercely, black-purple energy enveloping his hands. He growled, are you joking with me? Witnessing the impending power explosion, Lin turned pale, sweating, only able to stammer apologies. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. A few days later, Crash trained tirelessly at the manor under Crimson's strict supervision. Deep blue aura flared around the sword as he attacked and defended repeatedly, focusing on countering Crimson's blazing energy. He nimbly dodged and parried each strike. His movements sent powerful aftershocks through the training room. After the intense sparring, Crimson spoke, that's enough. Crash collapsed to the floor, breathing heavily. The black orb hovered, approvingly commenting, the sword I taught this time is high level and unique. Advanced a unique skill. In an instant, he captured all the opponent's movements, absorbing many techniques. Relying solely on instinct and sixth sense, Crash became nearly proficient. Crimson encouraged, when you enhance your body with high-grade herbs, your body will keep pace with your combat thinking. You will grow even stronger. It was time to leave this place. Crimson's reminder revitalized Crash, and he responded, He replied decisively, donning the brown robe, ready to join the Empire tournament. All right, let's set off, he thought as he walked down the corridor. He took out the shimmering blue potion, fortunate to have brought it along. Memories from a few days earlier resurfaced, when he asked Durling, with this potion, I won't reveal my identity, right? Durling was enthusiastic, even magic won't detect it, helping you disguise as a commoner from a neighboring kingdom to enter the tournament. Calling the earlier joke, Crash snapped, you should have given this to me from the start, why turn me into a woman, bastard? Durling laughed it off, just a little joke. When he realized the potion's effect lasted a day, Crash's anger subsided. Back in the present, he left the Pine Pavilion, starting a new journey. Durling was trustworthy, but dealing with his stubbornness was exhausting. Crash sighed, holding the disguise potion. At the manor gate, Butler Arius had prepared everything for the trip. He reported, we are ready, Mr. Crash. A broker from the Bleak Wolf region and a merchant will assist the secret infiltration. Please keep your identity confidential. Crash was satisfied, commenting, meticulous, with this preparation, passing Bianca will be easy. Thanks to Arius' arrangement, Crash could leave the Pine Pavilion without trouble. Arius bowed to acknowledge the order. The deep blue guardian aura flared, resolute, yes, entrust this place to me. I will let no one in, not even the homeowner. This butler was utterly loyal to his master. This loyalty stemmed from the previous day's event when Durling provided the color-changing remedy. The old butler knelt before Crash, tears streaming. Thank you for saving my daughter. Now I have no regrets. Crash looked at him coldly yet authoritatively. If you are truly grateful, continue living. I will ensure your daughter's safety. Then devote your life to serving me until you are free. Grass thought, compared to his daughter's life, this price was trivial. Arius exclaimed emotionally, yes, I swear to live to serve you. Witnessing the dedication, Crash thought he could forgive Arius' past betrayal. He turned to Bianca, who was wearing the same robe. He gently said, Bianca, thank you for helping me. Knowing she was about to leave for the mission, Crash reminded, it's been a while since you visited home. Enjoy and rest fully. Bianca refused, insisting, no. After taking care of Slim, I will return. I will wait for you at the Pine Pavilion, Mr. Crash. She passed by with a determined look that left him astonished. A 12-year-old girl with such steadfast thoughts. Crash smiled, all right, I will return soon. He bid farewell, holding the wicker basket. Seeing the delicious sandwich inside, he realized the noise from last night was Bianca preparing breakfast for him. He nodded in thanks, promising to eat later. Bianca pulled her hood down, eyes sad as she watched him, gently wishing, safe travels, Mr. Crash. He told her to take care, then decisively waved goodbye. The carriage began rolling, heading straight toward the Empire under the guidance of the Crow Crimson flying high above. 5 peaceful days passed. Crash used the time on the carriage to train diligently, causing the dark energy and erosive energy constantly swirling around his body. Crimson hovered beside him, asking about the state of the erosion power. Crash replied calmly that thanks to his sixth sense, it was still quite stable. Even so, he felt a little regretful because that merchant was far too cautious. That man kept choosing safe routes, leaving Crash with no chance to absorb more erosion energy. Looking at the blue-haired merchant girl casually eating an apple up ahead, Crimson silently thought that his butler truly had an eye for people. Suddenly, the apple in the girl's hand fell to the ground in shock. Crimson instantly grew alert and said softly that it seemed the carriage had run into trouble. A savage band of bandits suddenly appeared, surrounding the poor merchant girl tightly. She only had time to cry out in panic as she was driven into a corner. The masked leader approached coldly, while the subordinates behind him wore sinister smiles because of their master's bottomless greed. A rough hand grabbed the girl's head, leaving her with no choice but to burst into tears in despair. She blamed herself for not noticing the bandits sooner, and feared she would die in this desolate place. But right after that, a streak of dark purple light suddenly tore through space, knocking down the surrounding bandits in the blink of an eye. Crash appeared, his eyes as cold as death itself. The bandits stared at him in a daze. Who was that scrawny brat? Furious at being interrupted, the leader roared and ordered them to seize him at once. In an instant, the entire vicious bandit group swung their axes and spiked maces together, charging madly straight toward Crash. They rushed in fiercely, convinced that a small child like Crash could not resist them. One of them shouted, "Brat, got any other tricks? Without a weapon, do not even dream of escaping." Surrounded by enemies, Crash remained strangely calm. He curled his lips, letting dark purple energy flare in his hand and turn into a powerful sword of shadow. A weapon, you mean this? In the blink of an eye, Crash swung his sword, unleashing slashes shrouded in purple aura that stripped the entire bandit group of any ability to fight back. Crash's sharp, cold gaze locked onto the leader, making that man shudder despite himself. Damn it. The masked leader, his hand gripping the giant axe tightly, began to realize that something was wrong. So you're not an ordinary child. He roared, swinging the heavy axe down in a fatal blow. I will finish you with a single strike. But before that terrifying weight, Crash still managed to raise his energy sword to block. Sparks burst from the collision, making the leader's eyes widen in shock. Crash not only stopped the attack dead, but immediately counterattacked with a brilliant slash that left his opponent completely stunned. The leader was shaken. He had read my attack. That man had never expected the technique he once used to bring down others to now be turned back against himself. Immediately after, a blazing surge of flame suddenly erupted, enveloping Crash's entire body. Seeing that familiar flame and overwhelming aura, you are the disciple of the butcher hound Butmung. Butmung was a deranged murderer, the one behind Bianca and also a pawn of the force invading the world. He once received orders to infiltrate Derling and slaughter civilians, but in the end, all those crimes ended beneath Saklut's blade. Crash waved his hand, letting the black flames swallow the enemy in an instant. He pondered to himself, then what exactly did all of this mean? Thanks to her achievement of defeating Butmung, Saklut had become famous throughout the empire. The Royal Gazette even reported that the 16-year-old lady of House Van Haim had defeated a servant of the invading army. However, according to the old timeline, he should not have infiltrated Derling yet. Then why had his disciple appeared in this lawless land? Was everything not happening far too early? Crash could clearly feel the disturbance of fate arriving faster than he had imagined. I have a bad feeling, Crash thought silently. He decided he had to obtain the Golden Dragon Potion and leave this place as soon as possible. The journey continued, bringing him to Cylon, the magnificent capital of the Ephania Empire. The atmosphere here was boiling with excitement because of the tournament's opening ceremony. The martial arts tournament drew a dense crowd, everyone brimming with anticipation. Look, there really are a lot of people. There will definitely be many interesting figures showing up. Amid the crowd, a striking white-haired girl appeared. She was Sidley Ephania, the 14-year-old fourth princess of the empire. She observed the arena with a calculating gaze, intending to draw rough diamonds into Jiahen Academy. Seeing the prince's somewhat free-spirited posture, the female attendant beside her reminded her uneasily, "Your Highness, that does not look proper. If His Majesty sees this, he will faint." At the mention of her father, Sidley Ephania only sighed in exasperation. "Do not mention Imperial Father again. Oh, speak of Cao Cao and I hear him coming." In an instant, the image of the enraged emperor appeared. "Sidley Ephania, you again." Sidley Ephania was the emperor's youngest princess, a genius who had displayed extraordinary intellect from the age of 7 by solving complex mathematical theorems. Ministers had once been astonished, believing she would rewrite the history of the empire and that this exceptional talent had to be reported to His Majesty at once. A candidate for succession. Sidley Ephania stared at the paper in her hand, her eyes full of worry. She understood very clearly. She knew that if someone as weak as herself were drawn into the brutal struggle for the throne, death would come very quickly. To stay alive, Sidley Ephania decisively crumpled the paper, then performed a mad act by throwing books into the air and laughing foolishly. She had to make everyone give up the idea of appointing her as successor. From then on, Sidley Ephania used all of her genius intellect to build the image of an unruly, destructive, and uncontrollable princess. She caused chaos everywhere, making the elderly scholars in the library suffer as they tried to stop her. In the end, even those who had once placed great expectations on her lost heart, sighing as they admitted they had misjudged her. Whispers rose, saying she was unworthy of inheriting the throne. Lying sprawled across the table in boredom, Sidley Ephania heard Sarah, the female attendant who had watched over her for many years, speak up in reminder. Sarah said she knew this was only a disguise, but lately the princess had been acting a little too much. Suddenly, Sidley Ephania sprang up, pointed toward the crowd, and called out loudly, "Sarah, look over there." Her gaze was drawn to someone in a black cloak, trudging along with a crow on his shoulder. Sidley Ephania silently assessed him, a gloomy aura, suspicious eyes, and even carrying a nose. There was also a crow on his shoulder, making everything about that trudging figure into a strange and unforgettable highlight. She was certain that from head to toe, that stranger radiated the aura of a true villain. She wagered that he was someone from the Van Haim clan, the sworn enemy of the Ephania royal family. Although it was hard to believe that a Van Haim would appear here openly, Sidley Ephania still decided to investigate on her own. Despite Sarah calling after her in panic to stop her, Princess Sidley Ephania immediately jumped down. Then she rushed off, determined to expose the true face of that suspicious person at once. Because she was in too much of a hurry to chase after her target, Sidley Ephania suddenly tripped, realizing in panic that she was about to fall face first to the ground. But then, just as she thought her face was about to smash to the floor, a hand reached out in time to catch her. Sidley Ephania froze in shock. Looking up, she realized she had crashed into the very black-cloaked figure from earlier. Crash looked coldly at the unruly brat in his arms, then reminded her that she should watch where she was going. After helping her stand steady, he calmly continued walking through the crowded hall, leaving Sidliaphania standing frozen as she stared after that mysterious back. He had left no small impression on her. Sidliaphania stood still, her mind in turmoil before the stranger's attitude. That voice, that attitude, does he know who I am? Meanwhile, Crash walked quietly, silently thinking that luck was on his side since he had met the fourth princess early. He reminded himself that it would be best to avoid meeting her again in order to keep his secret hidden. On the registration form, he used the alias Crash, 14 years old, from the Ojiwang region of the Empire. After completing the procedures, he began looking for lodging, but everywhere he went, he only saw cold signs hanging in front of the doors saying there were no rooms left. Crash muttered in frustration. Everywhere is full already. Standing before an unfamiliar house, Crash sighed in frustration. It seemed he would have to sleep out on the streets again tonight. Suddenly, an aged voice rang out from behind him. "Hey, little boy." Crash opened his eyes in surprise when he saw a kind old woman standing there silently, looking at him. She asked if he was a contestant in the martial arts tournament, then kindly invited him to rest at her house for the night, if he had nowhere to sleep. Though the Crow Crimson watched the scene with obvious suspicion, Crash still gave her a radiant smile in return. "Really? Then I will accept." Without the slightest doubt, he followed the old woman, leaving Crimson to fly behind him and grumble nonstop. That carefree attitude left the Crow clicking his tongue in exasperation at how troublesome fake regressors were. As dusk settled, the group stopped before a cozy wooden house nestled in the heart of the capital. The old woman gave directions. "Use the room at the back on the second floor. I will prepare dinner, come down, and eat with us later." Once upstairs, Crash felt relieved that he finally had a bed to rest in, but just as he was about to enter the room he froze. Before him stood Princess Sidliaphania, and she was just as startled to recognize the acquaintance from earlier. Crash covered his face helplessly at the awful coincidence, while Crimson flew into a rage, snapping that this was definitely a trap. Knowing that being recognized would be extremely troublesome, Crash decided to ignore her and quietly slip straight back to his room. Seeing that he did not even bother to answer and hurried away, Sidley pouted and said, "You really are strange." Sidliaphania followed Crash, chattering nonstop about why he was ignoring a beautiful girl who was talking to him. Crash frowned in irritation, strode on decisively, and answered coldly, "You are not my type. There are many people in this world far more beautiful than you, Sidliaphania." Hearing that, she merely curled her lips in curiosity. "Oh, such as who?" Crash still kept his distance, snapping that he had no obligation to answer, but Sidley only laughed and continued following him. Her shameless persistence made Crash even more annoyed, and he warned through gritted teeth, "Stop following me." Ignoring his displeased attitude, Sidliaphania still suggested excitedly, "Come on, let us have dinner together. I want to know more about you." What answered her was only Crash's blunt refusal. "I am not going." Troublesome. The atmosphere instantly grew heavy as Sidliaphania stopped in the dark corridor. The air around her changed completely, utterly different from her playful manner a moment ago. "You know I am a princess. Do you truly wish to treat me this way?" she threatened in a cold voice. Crash halted, his eyes narrowing with vigilance, while Crimson on his shoulder also sensed something abnormal about this girl. Sidliaphania curled her lips into a meaningful smile, her eyes shining brightly as she watched his back. "Bent your back, esteemed sir from Starin." Crash was startled, cold sweat breaking out as he realized this little princess was far sharper than he had imagined. He cut the conversation off coldly. "I do not understand what you are saying. Children should go to sleep after dinner." "What? Being called a child?" Sidliaphania shouted in anger. "Who are you calling a child? You yourself are only a little brat." Lady-in-waiting Sarah stepped forward and asked whether that child truly came from Starin, and Sidley affirmed with certainty that he did. While Crash calmly ate dinner downstairs, Sidliaphania continued observing in secret, realizing there were several points in his accent he could not conceal. Sarah exclaimed in admiration, "Your Highness truly has keen insight. Only someone like you could notice such a small difference." Sidley said smugly that ordinary people might overlook it, but she remembered and analyzed everything she had ever seen. Sarah asked anxiously whether they should capture him for interrogation, but Sidley immediately dismissed it, because things were only just beginning to get interesting. The report about third Princess Sigrun changing completely in just 1 year struck Sidliaphania's mind like a bucket of cold water. The image of Sigruniphania with her gloomy face, chaotic eyes, and the streak of blood on her lips surfaced in a haunting vision. Sidliaphania realized in shock that elder sister was no longer the person she had once known. The situation was more serious than she had imagined. Sidley clenched the stair railing, her eyes trembling with fear. If this continued, the first princess and second princess would be in danger, and the imperial palace might sink into tragedy. At the same time in the arena, a brutal melee was unfolding. Thunderous impacts sent clouds of dust billowing up, many opponents were knocked down, and the audience was stunned by the overwhelming power. Crash stood amid the wreckage, his hood covering half his face, while Crimson perched on his shoulder, making him seem even more mysterious. Crash clearly felt Sidleifania's observing gaze, thinking to himself that perhaps that girl had already taken notice of him yesterday. It was exhausting, but he reassured himself that at least the preliminary round had ended without any major incident. This preliminary round truly was a harsh purge. 100 people fought in a melee, but only the 4 strongest could advance. As Crash was walking briskly through a dark corridor in the palace, he was suddenly blocked by a martial artist. That man's body wrapped in bandages and covered with crisscrossing scars. That man looked him over and spoke, just as the rumors said, "The crow on your shoulder and that cunning face." That man suddenly asked, making Crash stop short, "You are a member of the Night Crow flock, are you not?" Why would he think that? The name Night Crow flock immediately put Crash on guard, because it was a notorious and extremely dangerous assassin organization in the Empire. Crash silently weighed the matter, then denied it coldly. "You are mistaken, I am not one of that organization." Seeing Crash remain firm, the bandaged man lowered his tone, hurriedly waving his hands as he said he'd not want to cause trouble and only wanted to make friends. Crash stood silently in place, his mind in turmoil. He kept thinking about the person behind the scenes that man had just mentioned, while Crimson also realized the situation was unusual. It immediately spoke up, "This seems bad, let me handle this." Immediately afterward, Crimson cast an illusion that made the bandaged man stand frozen, his eyes turning empty. Seeing the crow circling around that man from earlier, Crash asked curiously what it had done, and Crimson calmly said it was merely mind-manipulating illusion magic. It also did not forget to mock him, saying that because Crash had a bit of talent too, it decided to lend a hand this time. Taking advantage of the moment, Crash began questioning the dazed man. "Hey, Mummy Rap, what happened to the 7 Night Crows?" He whispered that recently the organization had almost been wiped out. Crash froze. If that were true, why were they still monitoring the tournament? Mummy Rap revealed that everything had followed the orders of a new master, the one who had driven them to the brink of despair. "Who is this new master?" Crash pressed. The answer nearly stunned him into silence. It was the second prince of the Ephania Empire. The image of the plump, food-loving prince appeared, brother of Sigronifania and Sidleifania. "Sidleifania," Crash murmured. In his memory, the 7 Night Crows had always been a secret tool of the royal family, used to monitor and manipulate the nobility. The existence of a new master was absurd. The secret between the 7 Night Crows and the royal family should have remained hidden until the empire's collapse. Crash suddenly realized the second prince was merely a pawn to strengthen the faction for the eldest prince. If he moved against the eldest prince, the forces behind him would also crumble, and the one who benefited most from this chaos was the one silently observing from outside. That name flashed in Crash's mind, sending a chill down his spine. He realized that the legacy Arthur inherited in the previous timeline had succeeded, but the ending had been catastrophic. From what Crash knew of the future, Sigronifenia's true goal was to seize the royal symbol, the White Dragon. To pave the way for Arthur to ascend to the throne smoothly, she even planned to eliminate her own sister Sidleifania. In the end, Sigronifania would end her own life, leaving Arthur alone on the throne. He had brought the empire to ruin when she was no longer there to assist. If Sigronifania ascended, the empire would surely collapse, triggering the erosion pandemic at its most terrifying scale. Crash gritted his teeth, dark purple-black flames erupting around his hands. To prevent the world from destruction, he had to shatter that plot and seize Sigronifania's skill. Looking at the black crow on his shoulder, Crash pleaded, "Crimson, I need your help." Crimson flapped his wings, his red eyes drilling into him, warning not to rely too heavily on the future. "But this time, I will help you," Crimson said. Crash smiled slightly, extending his hand for the crow to land. He glanced at the mummy wrapped frozen by the spell, then coldly concluded, "Forget it, he has completed his role." Yet Crimson had another idea. He shot a black feather into the man's head, then declared he would turn him into a minion. The black crow refused to let go. Under Crimson's control, the mummy wrap staggered to his feet like an empty shell. He quietly walked back to his position on command. Watching his figure vanish into the dark corridor, Crimson asked Crash about the next move. Crash adjusted his hood, his gaze chilling. It was time to use this disguise to infiltrate the main circle and hunt the real 7 Night Crows. Meanwhile, in a dusty, dark library, a mysterious figure sat amid towering stacks of books. He flipped through old pages, his hoarse, murderous voice echoing. That squinty-eyed bastard called Crash right. He tore the papers in his hands frantically, grinding his teeth in uncontrollable rage. Crimson energy burst from his emaciated body. His red eyes flared as he roared that those who dared impersonate the 7 Night Crows must pay. The main tournament began with the 32 strongest contestants of the continent. In the blazing arena, Crash in disguise easily defeated a large opponent. Loudspeakers echoed throughout the stands, announcing the winner of match 32 as Crash. The crowd erupted, chanting his fake name in a fevered atmosphere. Crimson noted that everyone fought their best, but it was Crash who made the match dramatic. Crash adjusted his mask, thinking it was time for the real character to appear. As he left the arena, he saw Aphania secretly watching him from above. He sighed inwardly, that girl, I warned her, yet she still sneaks to observe. The qualifiers ended. Aphania suddenly blocked him in the corridor, curiously asking if he had won overwhelmingly. Aphania squinted, scrutinizing him, confirming he was no ordinary child. Crash responded indifferently, yet she pressed on about the meaning in his eyes. Crash closed his eyes slightly, calmly saying something profound. Nothing, I just think you have also experienced many hardships. Words hit a weak spot, leaving Aphania stunned, her face showing shock as if she had been seen through. Seeing her still standing there, Crash passed by unwarned. I only say one thing, take care of yourself. Tomorrow is the main round, I am going to sleep. The door slammed coldly, leaving Sidley clutching her head in confusion and panic. She did not understand how a stranger could know so many secrets about her. He came from elsewhere. How could he know her story? Is the royal agent you hired trustworthy? Aphania asked worriedly. Sarah bowed solemnly, replying, I will check again. Witnessing everything, Crash concluded that Aphania still being here showed she probably understood part of Sigrin's plan. Sidley watched Crash, smiling meaningfully. Crash, you are indeed not simple. He signaled to the crow. Let's go, Crimson. Only waiting for the real character to appear, but he still wondered if the little princess had seen through him. Just a few steps forward, a hoarse, hate-filled voice rang from the shadows. Hey, you enjoy pretending too much. A long-haired man, tattered clothes, wild eyes stepped out to block Crash. Another uninvited guest. A familiar murderous aura made Crash freeze. He looked at the mummy wrap in front of him, inwardly astonished. Ah, do not tell me he revealed himself this early. Instantly, Crash swung both swords at terrifying speed. He charged frantically, not allowing the opponent to retreat. Sharp strikes came in succession, forcing Crash to devote all his strength to defense. Suddenly, he reached out to grab Crash and roared violently. As long as I catch you, nothing will be worrisome anymore. Crimson-red energy like demon bones erupted from his arm, creating a heavy pressure. He laughed madly, coldly declaring, It is over, kid. A strike carrying immense force slammed straight at Crash. In the blink of an eye, he spun and launched a counterattack. The kick struck directly at his avatar. It is useless, your world invasion skill has no effect on me, Crash declared coldly as he stood above, the dark shadow of the Crimson Crow covering the entire space. Crash had reversed the situation, leaving his opponent stunned and bitterly defeated. Defeated man lay on the ground, stunned when he heard the name Aspenapoji. He trembled, sweat pouring down, wondering how the other party knew the true identity he had tried to hide. Crash kept pressing, his voice sharp, looking for the one whose heart had been stolen by Sigrin. Where is that person now? I need to talk, he said, watching his opponent's panicked look. He made an offer that could not be refused, pointing straight at that assassin and making a shocking promise. I will use my skill to take back your heart and expose Sigrin's scheme. Final secret was revealed. Crash, the world invader, was in fact the summoner Obo Aspenapoji. The image of a gaunt girl wearing glasses, exhausted, appeared as she clutched a worn old bag tightly. Obo Aspenapoji had suffered a tragic fate, imprisoned by the Empire for 1,000 years simply because she had lost her heart. Crash looked at her and thought silently, your fate is even more tragic than mine, as memories of his past life surfaced. He remembered the previous timeline. Arthur had brought her in and insisted she would be useful to the team. However, the title of World Invader made her constantly scorned and coldly rejected by the Hares. Although she called herself the only summoner, she only knew how to hide in her tent, silently doing heavy labor to avoid those prejudiced gazes. Because of that, no one knew the truth, that she was the legendary Crash. Crash walked away quietly, memories of the assassin clan surfacing again, knowing that a soul summoner could easily control corpses to serve his own purpose. Thanks to that, every clue about the assassin organization led straight to Aspenapoji. Ek had been destroyed during the academy days, vanishing completely after Arthur captured him. Her true identity became a mystery to the world. Leaving the old memories behind, Crimson commented when he saw Crash being harsh with her in the shabby room. Crash answered coldly, I have to be firm, gripping tightly and forcing her to look straight at him. Aspenapoji trembled, tears streaming down her face. You just said you would help me find my heart. Without giving her time to resist, Crash activated the black insect cap skill. Magical chains and streams of purple energy began surrounding the target, the heart that originally belonged to her. Realizing the conditions were complicated, using direct power became difficult. He leaned close to her hand and held out a small knife. If you agree to hand over your heart, I can seize it right now. Facing her only chance, the girl cried out through her tears, I agree. Crash was still not satisfied and demanded, Do not just say empty words. Add emotion. Only emotion can guide the heart. Although Crimson wondered about his excessive seriousness, he continued to use psychology, painting a vision of the future. You are sick of your current life, are you not? He promised a relaxed life, with everything handled by the dead, eating well and playing as much as she pleased. Conversely, if she did not take back her heart, she would serve the royal family for life, working without rest. Fear made Aspenapoji lose control, an eerie soul flaring around her as she screamed, "No, I do not want to work anymore." The soul summoner's power erupted violently with her rage, Erboa sobbing uncontrollably. Because she had endured forced labor for 1,000 years, she clung to Crash and begged him to save her. Crash coldly pushed her to the final step. "Then the only way is to hand your heart to me, so you can escape lifelong slavery." "What heart? I surrender. I will give you this heart, please help me be free." The girl screamed in despair, while Crash still replied calmly, "Not yet." He placed his hand on her head and demanded absolute trust. "I will send the heart here in exchange for your deepest desire, please trust me." Obo Asp sobbed weakly, "Please, I only want to live comfortably." The threads of Sigma magic shattered before her will. Obo, Ash shouted, "Take my heart at last." His pressure made her willingly offer her heart to him. Crash smiled in satisfaction because he had achieved his goal. He said broadly, "Well done," then clearly declared, "Obo As, now you are free." Although the agreement had been reached, Everest was still trembling and demanded it back. "Then hurry and return my heart." Crash coldly reassured her, "Wait, I will keep my promise. This is a transaction. I will return it when everything is over." Seeing her sitting on the floor and whining, "You, sob, I do not want to do anything," Crash snapped, "Stop crying and get straight to the point." "Aspenapoji, what is Sigrin planning?" "You know the fourth princess's swordmaster, Sarah Vaitra. She received a secret order to eliminate Sarah in order to assassinate Princess Sidley Ifania, but the scene had been reversed. Sarah was badly wounded, her face distorted from shock. Impossible, someone stronger than me." Spear suddenly pierced through her chest from behind. The one who struck was Mary Diana. She ambushed Sarah, leaving her badly injured and unable to resist. Standing in a pool of blood, Mary Diana looked at the defeated one with contempt. "You should be proud to be sacrificed for the Empire." While the hideous giant stood behind her, she murmured about the cruel order from Lady Sigrin. Everless, the order to use the dead to assassinate the fourth princess, Sidley Ifania. Looking up at the bright moon, Mary Diana sank into longing for her master Arthur. A year had passed since returning to the past, yet hope still remained in her heart. "Master Arthur, can you see me? Lady Sigrin and I are doing everything for you." Boundless longing gnawed at Mary Diana's mind, carrying her back to her memories before the apocalypse. On the first Saturday afternoon after the regression, Mary Diana remembered Arthur's promise to meet in front of the Peace Monument. Her heart pounded wildly as she eagerly ran to the meeting place with fierce faith, yet Arthur did not appear. Standing beneath the statue with Abella, Mary Diana could only cry out in despair. "Why have I waited so long and still cannot meet Arthur?" Both Abella and Arthur disappeared without a trace, leaving Mary Diana to wander the night streets alone, wondering where he had been throughout the year of waiting. Even so, Sigrin's words still echoed, reminding her to believe Arthur would return. Mary Diana tightened her grip on the spear, determined, "Before that day returns, I will restore my old strength and make him proud of his strongest spear." She told herself she had to work even harder to complete the mission, then turned to look at the giant. Mary Diana questioned coldly, "Hey Everless, the crowboy in the tournament is a corpse you control, right?" Everless, in her grotesque form, trembled and admitted it, making Mary Diana curl her lips and praise the clever move of attaching the crow to draw attention. Immediately after, she issued an icy threat. "Do not be foolish enough to do anything while Lady Sigrin is absent. You know whose hand your heart is in." Under that terrifying pressure, Everless revealed the panic of a small girl with glasses beneath her gigantic shell, stammering in fear, "Of course, then I shall take my leave." Frightened into losing her composure, Everless quietly left, carrying a large sack over her shoulder. Watching from behind, Mary Diana curled her lips into a sinister smile. "Everless, you usually only collect ugly corpses, so why hide a cute specimen like Crash this time?" She licked her lips regretfully. "What a pity he is only a corpse." Meanwhile, Crash remained hidden beneath the robe, his hand gripping the sword hilt tightly, ready to enter the decisive battle. He had not expected that in the end, he would have to face him in the finals. His opponent was Pire, a gentle 14-year-old commoner who had always dreamed of peace. On the surface, Pire looked perfectly ordinary, but in truth he had once been a renowned warrior of the Asura generation. The stands thundered with cheers as Night Fruit drew his sword for the first time. "You actually do not like assassination, right?" He advised Pire to seize the chance to enter La Henner Neutral Academy, abandon the name Night Fruit, and live an ordinary life. Still nothing has changed, Crash thought as he looked into Pire's eyes. He was still the same kind friend as before, always gentle and considerate toward others. "Pire, let me give you a piece of advice. If you hold on to too much hope, then you will not be able to bear it when true despair comes crashing down." Those harsh words instantly made Pire's face turn dark and cold. The match erupted at once. The instant the referee called the start, Pirret counterattacked with force, rushing forward like lightning, but he was lightly blocked by him. He suddenly unleashed 10 shadow steps, his terrifying speed creating deep blue afterimages that surrounded the target. How disappointing, Crash, Pirret roared, his sword techniques pouring down in rapid succession. Crash froze when he recognized the familiarity in every sword strike. That movement was, the two charged at each other, and Pirret was stunned to realize that every feint of his had been seen through. He could not believe the opponent knew his swordsmanship by heart, as though they had practiced together for a very long time. Every sword strike was perfectly neutralized by Crash, leaving no opening at all. His cold, deep gaze made Pirret shudder despite himself. In truth, Crash understood Pirret better than anyone. He knew Pirret had grown up in the snowy lands, training bitterly in footwork as fluid as water to create the ultimate technique, true step 10,000 Lei. Thanks to the memories of the old timeline, every habit, feint, and finishing blow of Pirret was in Crash's grasp. Crustum thought to himself, I have watched Pirret for far too long. I even understand him better than he understands himself. Pirret roared in despair as every attack he poured his heart into still could not touch the hem of his opponent's clothes. At that moment, Grass poured deep blue energy into the sword and unleashed the technique of drawing later yet arriving first. Crash used his own blade to awaken the true potential sleeping within Pirret. Crash wanted Pirret to grow even stronger, so that even if his hope shattered, he could continue fighting and not be controlled by others. It was called helping, but a blow that defeated a friend still hurt fiercely. The loudspeaker rang throughout the stands, announcing the victor. The overall winner was Crash. Amid the feverish cheers, Crash raised his sword high together with Crimson the Crow, as if declaring his strength. Pirret whispered his farewell with weakening breath, wondering whether they would have the chance to meet again in the future. Looking at the opponent before him, memories of the promise to protect the world and Pirret's sincere gratitude from long ago suddenly flooded back, leaving Crash silent. This was the first time in both of his lives he had heard someone say thank you to him. Yeah, see you at the academy, Crash softly bid farewell as Pirret collapsed onto the arena floor. The answer he received was the firm agreement of an old friend. Alright, we will meet at La Henner. Meanwhile, second Prince Siphonophania was smug over his false victory, delighted that Night Fruit, controlled by Everless, had not disappointed him. In his mind, he had already envisioned using this assassin organization to win over the nobles and seize the throne. Good attitude. Remember that your heart is in my hand, so behave obediently like a loyal dog. Everless trembled and bowed her head. Why, yes, your highness. But that arrogance was quickly interrupted by a rush of footsteps. Despite the guards shouting and questioning their recklessness for daring to barge into the residence of the second prince, the executioners of the Black Dragon Knight Order still advanced imposingly, carrying a pressure that made others suffocate. Amid the air thick with killing intent, a woman slowly stepped out. She declared coldly, Siphonophania, second prince, you are under arrest for the attempted murder of Princess Sidliophania. Siphonophania was stunned and denied murdering Sidliophania, but the evidence was too clear when an order bearing his signature was found. It was discovered directly in Night Fruit's lair. He screamed madly, absurd, I never wrote that thing. In his panic, he ordered Everless to deal with the traitors who dared frame him. But the small girl could only mumble in the hands of the knights, already restrained at some unknown point without him noticing. Amid the tension, a clear voice suddenly rang out, just who exactly was killed. Sidliophania appeared together with the female swordswoman Sarah, completely unharmed. She mocked calmly, hey Sarah, when exactly was I killed? We have not even seen an assassin, much less been attacked. Seeing the two people who should have died appear, Sidliophania was utterly shaken. She could not believe her supposedly certain plan had collapsed, and could only wonder what was happening. The truth began on the night Sarah was targeted. Sidliophania's intuition had been correct when she anxiously asked Sarah whether they could truly trust the royal spy they had hired. Saphira could only suppress her unease and promise, I will check it one more time. At that time, they did not know that every spy in the palace had already betrayed them. Sidliophania bitterly wondered why she was still being targeted despite having abandoned the fight for the throne and pretended to be foolish for years. In the darkness of night, Sarah hurried away with an uneasy premonition, deciding that she had to return to the princess immediately. But at that very moment, a pitch-black energy enveloped her, and a deep, muffled voice echoed directly in her mind, Sarah Vitra, in exchange for you, I ask for your strength, and I will grant you immortal power for a period of time. Therefore, just play dead. Sarah was stunned to realize it was Crash's voice. He was speaking directly inside her mind. A surge of dark power suddenly enveloped Sarah, leaving her frozen in shock. A blazing red eye shaped like a star appeared, radiating an indescribably eerie air. Sarah snapped awake, still dizzy from what Crash had just done and from his instruction to play dead. But at that very moment, a chilling murderous aura closed in from behind her. She started and wondered to herself, is someone standing right behind me? The thought had only just flashed through her mind when Mary Diana appeared with the spear of death in hand. The merciless spear pierced through Sarah. Without the immortal power from Crash's crow, both Sarah and the princess would have had little chance of surviving. At that moment, Sidleifania spoke out boldly, "The reinforcements have returned. Get ready to take a beating, you lot." The order to arrest the vice commander of the Black Current Night Order on suspicion of espionage rang out in the tense air, making him tremble as sweat poured from him in fear. Standing beside them, Sidleifania went deathly still, her heart shaken to the core. What a spy. Sidleifania curled her lips in a mocking smile, her bright gaze fixed on her dazed elder sister. "Did you come to collect our bodies? Too bad we are still alive." Sidleifania ordered in a cold voice, "Sarah, deal with her." In an instant, Sarah swung the enormous greatsword, bringing down a thunderous blow upon Sidleifania's position. A violent explosion erupted, but Mary Diana had managed to use her spear to block Sarah's strike in time. Sidleifania stood frozen, her mind in chaos. How did things turn out like this? She bitterly recalled her cruel plan, ordering Everless to kill Sarah, then using her body to assassinate Sidleifania. And yet they still stood here calmly as if nothing had happened. Sidleifania gritted her teeth and clenched her fists in resentment when she realized the spies planted in the Black Current had been rooted out with ease. Sidleifania's gaze seemed to see through everything, making Sidleifania tremble. That cunning fourth princess had definitely known it all. She was the one who ruined the entire plan. The opponent was far too dangerous, and Fata was far too unlucky, which was why Sidleifania wanted to eliminate her. Sidleifania told herself that, her eyes flashing with extreme killing intent. She understood that if Sidley was allowed to live, sooner or later that woman would become a major threat. She could hesitate no longer and roared, "She must be killed right here, right now." She reached into her pocket and took out a bright red object that was beating violently. It was Aspen Apogee's heart, which Sidleifania squeezed tight to activate the glowing red seals around it. She gritted her teeth and ordered, "Everless, kill the fourth princess for me at once." Everless was under control, her eyes wide with pain. "What should I do? Crash still has not taken the heart." As if a machine had been infected by a virus, her body moved on its own and refused to obey. Everless screamed in despair as her body gradually lost control under the effect of the seals. Seeing her move sluggishly, Sidleifania shouted madly, "Everless, what are you doing?" Blazing red energy erupted from Everless, frightening everyone. "She really is a monster. Protect the prince and princess at once." In despair, Everless silently called out to her only savior, Crash, "Save me." Immediately, a powerful stream of purple-black energy suddenly reached out from the void. It tightened around Sidleifania's arm that was holding the heart. A heavy blow struck Sidleifania's wrist, forcing that woman to loosen her control at once. She stared blankly at her empty hand, then screamed in despair, "The heart is gone." Unable to accept reality, that woman realized she had lost everything. Not only had she failed to take the fourth prince's life, she had also failed in her plan to capture the second prince. She had even lost Aspenapui's heart. All her calculations collapsed in an instant, leaving Sidleifania with nothing but helpless, resentful screams as all her efforts came to nothing. But madness quickly swallowed her reason, and that woman gritted her teeth. Then she made up her mind, "Fine, then I will deal with the princess myself." While everyone was still distracted by Aspen Apogee, Sidleifania saw this as her last chance to turn the situation around. With extreme speed and maximum acceleration, that woman shot forward like a bolt of lightning. She aimed straight at Sidleifania and roared, "If I cannot use my technique, then I will fight you barehanded, sweetheart." A strike carrying terrifying weight came crashing straight down, but at the most critical moment, Crash appeared in time and stopped that attack. Purple-black energy exploded, colliding violently with Sidleifania's skill and creating a shockwave right in front of Princess Sidleifania. Sidleifania was stunned. "Wait, he blocked my family's secret technique that easily." As Mary Diana stared in shock at Crash's appearance, he was still straining to hold fast against the opponent's spear tip. Crash looked straight into Sidleifania's eyes and spoke in his familiar mocking tone. "Just like before, your simple way of thinking has not changed at all." Those words shook Sidleifania, leaving her wondering who the person before her was to understand her so well. Seizing the chaotic moment, Prince Sifong immediately shouted at the soldiers, "What are you still doing? Arrest her at once." A hand suddenly reached out and seized Sidleifania's weapon. The one suspected of plotting to assassinate the royal family, Mary Diana, was finally subdued before everyone's stunned eyes. Held firmly by the knights, that woman struggled wildly and shouted, "Let me go. Give me back my spear." Though the plan had been completely exposed, Mary Diana still could not hide her resentment. "Ugh, damn it all." Watching from afar, Crash blamed himself for doing unnecessary things, even though he had already known the outcome. Meanwhile, Everless was also being escorted away, still crying out desperately for help, "Save me, Sidleifania, Arthur." When the crowd dispersed, Sidleifania hurried over to Crash and called anxiously, "Hand Crash. You all right?" Crash suppressed the pain and answered with difficulty that things were not looking good. He knew in his heart that he had only just managed to block Sidleifania's terrifying strike, even after pouring out all his black flame. Crash bitterly realized he was still very far from the level of a master. That was the price of facing the divine cult head-on. Sidleophania hurriedly reassured him that she still had the defensive necklace. That royal treasure made Crash inwardly admire how thoroughly this princess had prepared. Rich people really were different when they went to battle. He only reminded her, as long as you are safe, that is what matters most. While the soldiers urgently investigated the accomplices, Crash secretly signaled Everless, "Take advantage of this chaos and leave this place." Crash prepared to leave. A pitch-black surge of energy erupted beneath his feet, swallowing both of them into the darkness. Before disappearing, he still left behind a message. Sidleophania, take care, and keep an especially close eye on your siblings. Sidleophania and Sarah only managed to call out an alarm for him to stay and treat his wounds. But Crash firmly refused. "Do not worry, I am used to it. Take good care of yourself." Looking at the traces left behind, Sidleophania felt sad that she had not had time to thank him for saving her life. She resolved to follow Crash to the academy and repay this debt. At the same time, the carriage carrying Crash and Everless was quickly rolling away. Crash inwardly marveled that teleportation skills were truly useful, though they still had many limitations. Aspinapoji explained that she could only teleport living people over a short range. After that, she took out a radiant stalk of grass and handed it to Crash. "Here, the golden dragon grass you asked for. I nearly died because of this thing, so remember to pay me generously." Crash accepted it with satisfaction and kept his end of the bargain. "It is all over. Here is the heart I promised. Take it." Everless stared blankly as she received the beating heart, unable to believe she was truly allowed to keep that precious thing. Everless hugged the heart tightly to her chest and said with emotion, "I thought you would make me work for you forever." She commented that Crash looked different from the depraved people she had met before, even though he had used that same power to block Mary Diana's strike. Crash thought that perhaps the dark flames had burned away the strength absorbed from the blood poison, so in her eyes, he seemed like one of their kind. He understood why Everless trusted him, but also began to worry that later he might be mistaken for a truly depraved person. Just then, Crimson's crow flew over, cutting into the conversation, having fun. "But I have to ruin the mood. Something serious has happened." The crow's gaze suddenly became sharp and serious. It stared straight at Crash, then delivered news that left him stunned. "It seems your family is in trouble." The image of Bianca collapsing in the white snow, her breath faint, her face pale, appeared. Crimson's grim message left Crash frozen. "Your fiancé is in danger. What are you sitting there for?" He only managed to exclaim in shock, "What?" Crimson kept his tone heavy and continued speaking. It revealed that it had just received word from the servants at Harden House. A dangerous man named Butcher Dog had secretly infiltrated the Harden House mountains. Worse, Crash's fiancée who was there had vanished without leaving any trace. Anxiety and rage surged at the same time, and Crash gritted his teeth. He suddenly recalled the bad feeling he had when meeting Butcher Dog's disciple earlier. So all of this was because of that. There was no time to waste. He immediately commanded Everless, "Everless, my fiancé is in danger. Go to Harden Hatch immediately." The carriage instantly changed course, rushing forward at terrifying speed. Everless was stunned by his urgency, stammering, "Huh? What? Yes." Sitting in the carriage, she was still in shock. "You are an invader and yet have a fiancé. Crash's girlfriend lives in Harden House." He muttered about the rumor that Venom's fiancé also lived there, not understanding which family would dare to marry their daughter to that terrifying house. Everless' face turned pale, but Crash responded coldly, "No." He stood up, his aura completely changing, and declared firmly, "I am not an invader, and Crash is just a nickname." A mysterious purple energy began to surround Crash, gradually erasing the disguise he had hidden for so long. Amid the bright magical vortex, he officially revealed his true identity. "My real name is Crash, the youngest son of House Venom, a family strong enough to make enemies tremble." Witnessing the young master's transformation, Everless was completely stunned. Her eyes widened in horror, even dropping the heart she was holding. She trembled and stammered in panic. "What, Vanhem, Sagrat, so Crash is from House Venom." Her scream echoed through the forest while the carriage continued its mad rush. Crash snapped, cutting through the panic. Now is not the time for that conversation. The scene shifted to the icy snow mountains. At the Harden House territory in the Roken Range, temporary tents of the search team had been set up in a gloomy atmosphere. Amid the night, a sob of regret sounded. "It is all my fault. If only I had told her then that I had the white flame fungus, Bianca would not have risked climbing the mountain." Jenica Hardenhouse, the second daughter of the family, choked with late regret. When asked why she followed Bianca up the mountain, Jenica explained through sobs that the fungus was not sold on the market. Foolish Bianca had gone to pick it herself with only a guidebook, so Jenica hurriedly gathered the search team to follow. A few days earlier, in the white snow of the Roken Range, Jenica led the search team. She intended to get the item the failed Vanim needed to return Bianca home quickly. Seeing Bianca trudging ahead, she called sister, but deep in Bianca's heart, she still held a strong belief: my husband is the best. No one is allowed to criticize. She looked back at Charlotte, her deep blue eyes shining with determination amid the falling snow. Bianca snapped, asking why her sister followed the search team, while Jenica stubbornly replied, none of your business. If I want to go, I go. The tension escalated when Jenica spoke harshly, telling Bianca to hold the fungus and return to Vanham, because she did not even want to see her sister's face anymore. Bianca silently swallowed her pain. She understood that Jenica always blamed her for their mother's death, and from then on had hated her. In her heart, she silently apologized and promised to return as soon as she found the white flame fungus. Back in the present, Jenica clenched her fists, tormented by thoughts that if she had not spoken those hurtful words, things might have turned out differently. Suddenly, a surge of blood-red killing intent erupted like flowing blood, and a masked demon appeared from the void with terrifying pressure. When we come along with you, the hunt has begun. Blood dripped onto the white snow, making the scene chilling. He spoke coldly to the two beautiful young ladies, while Jenica frantically asked who he was. The loyal guard, though gravely injured, still yelled, urging the two young ladies to run to save their lives. The brutal killer grabbed the soldier's head and clicked his tongue in annoyance, troublesome indeed. But today is a lucky day. He licked his lips, eyes blazing red with excitement as he saw his prey. Ahead, Bianca tried to suppress her pain, both supporting and urging the gravely injured Jenica hurry. In the desolate white snow, the butcher calmly followed the two struggling girls fleeing. He was delighted to find the perfect hostages in this remote place. Not rushing to finish them, he leisurely followed and hoarsely threatened, where are the young ladies hiding? Behind the large rock, Bianca and Jenica trembled in fear. Bianca gritted her teeth, realizing he was deliberately toying with them. Despite the imminent danger, she clutched the grass tightly in her hands, eyes firm. Sister, I promised. Crash. I must bring the white flame fungus back for him. Seeing Bianca stubborn, Jenica shouted in despair, do not mention your fiancé again. I also do not want to die here. Suddenly, she paused upon seeing an escape route. Jenica suddenly thought of a reckless idea and whispered closely to Bianca, Sister Bianca, I have an idea. She said that with the ancient treasure, they could move across the snow more safely than the killer. Jenica pointed to the treacherous glacier cliffs, suggesting they go to the ice crevice to slow him down. But all of their calculations were seen through by the butcher. He stood on the cliff looking down, laughing oddly clever, young ladies, go ahead and try to run. Just as they approached the edge of the ice crevice, Jenica suddenly collapsed because, exhausted, she burst into tears. My legs have no strength left. Just leave me here. At the deep abyss, Bianca looked at her sister and asked, ready? Jenica did not even understand. Bianca coldly told her they would jump to the other side. Jenica panicked and objected, but Bianca calmly replied, staying would be death anyway. At that moment, the killer caught up. He swung the giant axe and jeered, young ladies, it is dangerous to stand there. Come here with me. The instant he reached out, Bianca yelled now. She suddenly pushed Jenica into the crevice, leaving the killer stunned. He only managed to shout, what? Seeing the two girls fall into the deep darkness of the ice crevice, the butcher wildly reached out, but it was too late. Jenica's scream echoed through the cold air, and he roared, are you planning to find your own death? Looking down into the crevice, the killer smirked as he saw the two girls clinging to the cliff. So there is a grip there. Exposed, Jenica panicked, discovered, what should we do? Giving the prey no chance to react, the butcher lunged straight down with a mad smile. Fun, let me join. Showing off can cost your life. In the desperate situation, Bianca remained calm. She looked at Jenica with determination, then gently reassured, it is okay, Jenica. While Jenica was still frozen in panic, Bianca had thrown herself forward, embracing the killer to protect her sister. Jenica stood on the cliff, only able to cry out in helplessness, Bianca. That was the last image she saw before her sister disappeared into the white snow. Fortunately, the search team reported that the place Bianca fell had a very thick layer of accumulated snow, so there was still a chance she survived. Back in the present, Jenica bowed her head and wept in front of Crash, tormented by regret. If she had not suggested the ice crevice, Bianca would not have had to jump there. She blamed herself for not giving the item already in the mansion to her sister from the start, so that neither of them would have to face the cold-blooded killer. Hearing that, Crash's gaze darkened slightly. He pondered for a moment, then murmured, so that's how it is. Jenica was still screaming in pain. Don't say such irresponsible things. A full week has passed since that day. She feared that even if Bianca escaped that butcher, someone like her would still struggle to survive. A girl like Bianca, who spent all day reading books, would find it difficult to survive in that harsh mountain range. At the same time, deep in the snowy forest, Bianca lay curled beside a withered tree root, her breathing faint. In her daze, she was still calling the name of the person she longed for most. Crash, save your wife, this place is so cold. When she opened her eyes and woke, she let out a faint, dreamy murmur. then realized she had dozed off again. Over the past few days, she had survived on wild seeds and the warmth from sun-heat snow mushrooms, but her body was nearing its limit. Checking the wound on her leg, Bianca told herself it seemed her leg was doing better now. After falling from the ice cliff with the killer, Bianca was left all alone. She had to drag herself aimlessly toward higher ground, hoping to find a way to call for help. Fortunately, she discovered a place filled with sun-heat snow mushrooms radiating warm light. Just as the name suggested, sun-heat snow mushrooms gave off warmth on their own. Bianca thought she could rely on them to withstand the biting cold. She used the mushrooms to retain heat, found a small cave as shelter, then relied on a survival book to treat her wounds and find food. Yet the cold, her injuries, and malnutrition had drained Bianca's strength. She kept drifting in and out of sleep, growing even more worried, because the avalanche would surely delay the rescue team. Even so, she told herself she could not give up before giving her husband his gift. Suddenly, the killer Batsumang appeared with a menacing air. "Damn it, I finally found you." He smirked and coldly declared that this chase ended here, little lady. Meanwhile, Bianca was still struggling to drag herself through the white snow, murmuring that she had to eat something. Suddenly, she froze when she saw a few acorns beneath the snow. "Sorry, Mr. Squirrel, let me borrow a little." Suddenly, an object shot through the air and buried itself right beside her. Bianca looked up in shock. Her breath caught at the sudden appearance of the axe. A violent explosion of snow erupted, hurling Bianca far away. The impact sent her crashing down, rolling across the freezing ground. She only managed to let out a startled sound. From within the snowy mist, the dark silhouette of the killer Batsumang slowly approached. He mocked her, saying she truly was a strange monster, since her face still did not change at all. Narrowed his vicious eyes at her and sneered that getting money from the Vanham family really was not easy. Batsumang roughly grabbed Bianca by the neck and lifted her into the air. He growled, "If you had obediently acted as a hostage like an ordinary child, maybe you would have gone home safely." His gaze stopped on the glittering snowflake hairpin, casually calculating that he could sell it for money. At the fragile boundary, Bianca let out a weak groan of pain. In her mind, the desire to return home suddenly surged fiercely. Memories of the manor came back, where she had once quietly read books beside Crash and the butler Arius. Crash's warm smile in her memories seemed to soothe her present pain. Bianca realized that the days she spent beside him had planted something like emotion within her, and she also understood that it was happiness. Tears silently rolled down Bianca's pale face as she thought that if she truly had emotions, "If I had known, I would have loved you sooner." Only when she was about to lose everything did Bianca feel regret. In despair, she softly called the name of the person she always longed for. "I want to see you." That very moment, a mysterious dark figure appeared behind the killer, like a ghost. At extremely close range, Crash unleashed a powerful punch, sending the butcher flying far away. Ambushed unexpectedly, he roared in pain, "Cuff, who the hell are you?" Paying no mind to the enemy's roar, Crash gently caught Bianca's frail body in his arms. Looking at her pale face, he comforted her gently. "You did well, Bianca, leave the rest to me." "That was cool, 10 points, no objections." Bianca only managed to call his name, stunned and relieved. Crash smiled faintly, then turned to the Black Crow and ordered, "Crimson, I'm counting on you, take care of Bianca." Crimson repeated that he and Aspinahoji could not directly join the battle, otherwise they would break the invaders' rules. The subordinates were useless, and Aspinahoji was trembling in fear of the Bloodhound's master. Crash understood that getting Bianca away from this place was the safest choice. Even so, Crimson still could not hide his concern as he looked at Crash. His crimson eyes shone with warning. "Bloodhound is far stronger than you. Last time, you were only lucky there was an opening. Can you really win this time?" Crash's eyes blazed with resolve as he faced Bloodhound. "No matter how strong he is, the final victor will still be me." The furious killer roared, "Who are you? How dare you interfere in my business?" Crash coldly demanded that he return what he had taken. Before the other party's bewildered look, he growled, "Give my wife's blade of grass back right now, or I'll roast you." "Oh, so you are a Vanheim." Bloodhound Batsumang smirked as he recognized his opponent's identity. A series of blazing red axe strikes came crashing down, forcing Crash to defend with all his might. He was shocked to realize that the man's speed was terrifyingly fast. Even his sixth sense could barely keep up with that movement. The pressure from this butcher was so horrifying it seemed to touch the realm of a peak master. He roared madly that the bounty would increase tenfold if he captured both Crash and Bianca. Crash gritted his teeth, fully aware that he had only just reached the intermediate master rank. Even so, his resilient defense still left the man astonished. Batsumang laughed with delight, attacking like a storm and roaring, "Let's see how long you can keep blocking." A dangerous opening appeared, and he seized the chance to unleash an extremely powerful blow, sending Crash's sword flying before it stabbed into the ground. Standing before the disarmed boy, the killer laughed smugly. "Alright, that was pretty fun. Now it ends. Those who grow confident too early usually pay the price." However, just as the axe blade was about to fall, Crash suddenly vanished like a ghost, making Batsumang freeze. He disappeared. He frantically sniffed the air, roaring as he searched through the white snow. Suddenly, Crash rose from the snow right behind him. He poured all his strength into a close-range blow, aiming straight at the opponent's ribs. The strike sent him flying away in pain. Crash inwardly understood that with his current dull sword, he could not deploy his domain to counter the man's brute strength. The Flamefire skill was officially activated. Birdman widened his eyes in terror when he saw his opponent determined to bring him down at any cost, hurriedly crying out, "Wait, kid, do not burn so hot." He immediately unleashed the Shadow Bind skill, making Crash freeze and unable to move. An invisible sense of oppression crashed down, as if he had been dragged into another space. The killer slowly stepped closer, laughing coldly. "You cannot withstand this. The rescue team is almost here, but I will send you off first." The axe in his hand cleaved fiercely toward him. Crash shuddered as he realized his senses were being violently distorted. It was a secret art that used sound to scatter aura and paralyze the opponent's nervous system. If it had been the old Crash, he would have died before he even understood what was happening. But now he had survived things far worse. Crash gritted his teeth, deciding to push his aura to its highest limit to activate it. It was super perception, his sixth sense. Faced with that resistance, Birdman curled his lips mockingly. "How about it? How much longer can you hold on?" Crash understood that he could not act recklessly, because Birdman was on a completely different level. He hid his trump card, letting him grow complacent until the decisive moment. Realizing the search party was almost there, Crash reminded him in a cold voice, "The rescue team is nearly here. Uncle, you should disappear." However, those threats were actually only a psychological tactic meant to shake his opponent. He poured all his strength into unleashing Phantom War Axe, countless crimson axe blades rushing in like a storm. Meanwhile, Crash was still under the effects of Shadowbind, so moving was extremely difficult. He used super perception to block the attack, but his body had already been pushed into overload. Witnessing that scene, Aspinapoji trembled in fear, thinking to herself that Crash would die. Could this truly be his end? She was torn violently, wondering whether she should rush in to save him. But fear of the mad dog, Birdman's master, surrounded her mind again. Aspinapoji understood that if Birdman was killed, that monster would hunt her and Crash to the bitter end. But she could not watch her benefactor die unjustly. Just as she was about to rush out to help, the decisive crow appeared. Crimson flew over in time to stop her, coldly ordering, "Wait, do not interfere. We almost had a beauty saving the hero." Crimson said Crash had chosen this battle himself, then told Ebelas to trust the one who had taken back her heart. He affirmed that Crash had enough resolve to reach the end, then said pragmatically that if he died, he would simply find a way to make the corpse live again. At this moment, Crash was nearly out of strength. He knelt down, bracing himself with his sword to keep his balance, blood seeping from the corner of his mouth as he whispered, "I have reached my limit." He used my sixth sense to keep up with Birdman's movements. Crash gritted his teeth as he realized his own limits. He had burned too much aura, barely able to open his eyes. From now on, he could only stake his life on instinct. Suddenly, the shadow of an axe swept sideways, making Crash jolt in terror. The attack had arrived. Before he could steady himself, the butcher Birdman roared, "Take this axe and go rest in the underworld, kid." An axe blow carrying destructive force cleaved straight down at Crash's head in a perilous instant. In that moment between life and death, a deathly flash of light gleamed like the final turning point. Bitter memories surged back. Long ago, Crash had known he had no talent, always weak, and nothing like those geniuses. Those geniuses out there could openly overwhelm opponents with a fair, powerful, radiant blow. That was why he had hidden his fangs and claws until this very moment. Crash's eyes blazed with a deadly red. He officially activated the Limit Break State, Flame Eclipse Treasure Gate. Using Ignis Flame, Crash recklessly converted all the erosion energy in his body into raw power, forcing himself beyond his limits. But the price was enormous, because he could maintain that grotesque state for exactly 3 seconds. Crash roared in unbearable agony, "I will end this right here." The explosive power made Birdman cry out in horror. He could no longer keep up with the speed of Crash with the naked eye. Only one thought remained in his mind. If he did not dodge, he would surely die. He swung his ultimate technique, Demonic Shadow Echo, unleashing a fierce slash. The blade of flame tore through space, striking straight at the butcher. But Crash regretfully realized the slash had missed by only a few millimeters because the sound had distorted his vision. Right before the disaster happened, Crash sensed the danger from Birdman's sound. An extremely powerful impact sent him flying far away. Blood poured from the corner of his mouth. His sixth sense kept warning that the erosion effect was about to fade, and he had only 1 second left to avoid the fatal blow. Crash roared in fury, "The ticket to hell was bought by you for him, not for me," then immediately launched dark energy in a counterattack. In that life or death instant, Crash's concentration reached an absolute state. One blue eye shone brilliantly, radiating terrifying power. His entire body was enveloped in a dazzling deep blue halo. A single decisive strike was unleashed, firmly bringing down the enemy. After a heaven-shaking crash, the battle finally ended, but the price Crash paid was no less painful. He lost one arm and his body was covered in wounds. The strong could win without breaking a sweat, but those deemed weak had to pay for victory with blood and sacrifice. Crimson flew closer and spoke, "Are you satisfied yet, Crash?" He only gave a faint laugh through broken breaths. "I still did not manage to finish settling the score with that man. But enough, I will sleep for a bit first." With that, he was completely exhausted and collapsed onto the cold ground. Crimson immediately ordered, "Move out." Glowing teleportation circle opened and carried the group back to the Azure Pine Pavilion Hall. The Giant of Everest carefully carried Crash and Bianca, quietly stepping into the spatial gate. Bianca recalled the memories of her previous life when she met Crash at the mansion. She silently thought that if she could have expressed her emotions, the world would not have been so bleak as she sat across from Crash in the silent space. Crash quietly observed her, his heart swelling with doubt. Having emotions or being emotionless, which would make me suffer more? He wondered that if the emotions within her suddenly erupted, whether she would be so shocked that she fell into danger. Bianca slightly lifted her eyes and spoke bitterly. "We are like strangers now. Even if something happened to me, you probably would not care." Crash gritted his teeth, knowing clearly that this distance came from his family's cruel decisions. The horrifying memory of Dagraken's Hardenhands, the leader of the Hardenhands clan, going mad and slaughtering his entire family before ending his own life, surfaced, the tragic scene leaving only Bianca alive. After the tragedy, she was saved thanks to the sacrifice of Charlotte and Jenica. Soon after, the Wanham family annulled the engagement between Crash and Bianca, deeming a marriage alliance with the Hardenhands clan no longer valuable, preparing for the final farewell. Bianca admitted gloomily. Perhaps that was true. They would have no chance to meet again. In an instant, a powerful stream of dark purple energy erupted. His gaze turned icy sharp as he roared, "I warned you. If you want to seek death, I cannot stop you." The black cap skill activated and a gigantic demon mouth appeared, swallowing the snowman entity controlling Bianca whole. Absorbing too much of the cursed aura, the snowman entity instantly disintegrated beneath that hand. Everywhere was covered with the magical seals left by Crash. He looked at her, gently asking how she felt now. That was the first day Bianca escaped the snowman curse. She bitterly exclaimed that life was truly cruel, Lord Krasa. But just as the emotions once lost returned, she also officially became a monster in the chains of fate. 3 years later, in the icy region of Heidenhands, the war still raged on. Two weary soldiers looked at each other, complaining that they had fought for 3 years, paid little, yet faced high danger. The other bitterly replied that if the Afani Empire hadn't intervened, their kingdom of Stallone would have long been at peace. That man held secrets capable of shaking the entire empire, forcing the North to send envoys to silence him. It was that envoy who drove the Heidenhands Lord insane, leading to family tragedy and war. Rumor had it that after that incident, the White Beast annihilated the envoy, one of the 10 masters, in revenge, then retreated to the North Ice Palace. Amid the brutal battlefield, a deafening explosion erupted at the supply depot. Stallone soldiers guarding it panicked, shouting, "What on earth were those people doing?" Crash, now grown, with gray hair and strange tattoos on his neck, calmly observed the enemy's lapse. He moved like a ghost through the snow, causing the guards to panic and shout that the demon's faction was over there and must not be underestimated. Crash gritted his teeth, feeling his body nearing its limit. "Damn it, I've used too much of the cursed power already. Even if she were a saint, this state would be hard to save. Self-inflicted trouble must now be endured." Before the fortress gate, Crash knew he needed Bianca's help. He banged hard on the wooden door, shouting, "Wife, open the door. Your husband is about to be hunted down." A deep blue energy suddenly erupted from within. Sharp ice spikes unexpectedly shot up from the ground. The entire squad pursuing Crash was halted in an instant. Seeing the corpses impaled on ice pillars, Crash slightly turned his head. From the rubble, a figure with long white hair gradually emerged. He quietly said, "It's been a long time since we met." But the scene before Crash stunned him. Bianca stood there, a sword piercing her chest, blood staining the white dress. She weakly called, "Lord Crash." Crash rushed over in panic to catch her as she fell. He realized with horror that the fatal strike had been caused by the daughter of the envoy from years ago. Between gasps, Bianca repeated the question asked before the tragedy. Between feeling and living without emotion, had he ever thought which state was more painful? Memories of the tragic day surged back when Sister Jenica held her tight and said that deep in her heart, she had never hated her. "She didn't hate you, she only hated her own personality." Jenica's final words echoed endlessly in Bianca's mind. When she was soulless, she couldn't understand what those words meant, because it was too complex and contradictory in emotion. Therefore, when the Hardhands family, which had once caused her suffering, was destroyed, she felt no tremor. Only when she understood emotions did Bianca realize what her sister meant back then. It turned out that she truly loved her. Bianca held her head, crying in belated regret. If only she had known how to feel earlier, the family might have shared their grief and sat together to talk. perhaps the ending would not have been so tragic. And for Lord Crash, perhaps they could have been together more fully. Bianca gradually lost consciousness, her bloodied face mixed with late tears. In the delirium, Bianca's call rang out, tearing through the silent night. Crush awoke with a start in the hospital bed, his body wrapped in bandages after the horrific battle with the head lord. A small hand gently touched his hand. Bianca sat beside him, gently saying that she had always been here. Lord Crash, you've finally woken up. Crash looked around the luxurious room, surprised, asking if this was the Hardenhand's mansion. Bianca worriedly asked if his hand still hurt, but Crash sternly scolded. Climbing the mountain alone to act like a superhero. Do you want me to have a heart attack? Bianca lowered her head, softly saying she only wanted to find Veranduia snow mushrooms for him. Crash was silent before the sincere heart of the little girl. He quietly called her, then seemed to remember something. His bandaged hand extended, offering her a sparkling snow mushroom shaped like a snowflake. Bianca looked at the heavily bandaged hand, softly apologizing for making things turn out so badly. Even though his body was covered in wounds, Crash still smiled brightly to reassure her. Thank you, thanks to you we can now begin brewing the elixir. Bianca quietly called his name Lord Crash. She bowed her head, accepting the painful truth that she was still an emotionless being. Even though he risked himself to save me, causing this outcome, I still don't know whether to feel joy, anger, or sadness with him. Bianca clutched her sleeve, her heart heavy with unbearable restlessness. I don't want to keep this soulless face right now, like a faulty operating system needing a restart. Inside, she longed to laugh, to share sorrow and even anger with Crash, but she was still afraid. I don't want him to lose his soul and emotions like me. If he can't laugh, I don't want to laugh alone. Seeing Bianca sad, Crash gently reassured her not to worry too much about it. The effects of the curse would be halved on those not the main target. Bianca looked up with deep blue eyes, urgently pleading. Lord Crash, please help me regain the emotions I've lost. Mysterious purple energy erupted around Crash. He smiled confidently, replying, yes, even if you hadn't asked, I was going to do this anyway. At that moment, the magical lock of the Black Hat's skill lit up brightly, with the second seal condition, making him the most important person in Bianca's heart. The purple chains binding her frozen heart began to crack under the overwhelming power. Bianca, in pain, she opened her eyes wide in astonishment as she felt the deep rhythm within. Custom affirmed that from the beginning, he had intended to do this. Crash smiled gently, silently looking at the little girl before him. She could no longer hold back, resting her head against his chest and sobbing. Warm tears streamed down, melting the long covered ice. After crying, her heart felt much lighter. If this plan succeeded, at least her world would no longer be gray. The future briefly appeared, with Crash painfully holding Bianca amid the tragic scene. Bianca burst into sobs, her eyes blurring with the emotions she had just regained. After so many years of living in numbness, Bianca sat beside Grace on the bed. Grace gently asked whether she felt better now. Bianca wiped her tears and softly replied that she was fine now, and thanked him very much. But right after that, her face returned to its familiar indifference. Crustum looked at her and thought to himself, she had just cried like rain, yet now she had turned into a block of ice. Her emotional response really was slow. A sudden knock at the door broke the silence. Jenica Hardenhouse's voice rang out from outside. Crash, it is me, Jenica Hardenhouse, may I come in? Crash frowned slightly in caution. Jenica. Crash told her to come in. The moment Jenica stepped into the room, the atmosphere changed at once. She paused slightly when she saw Bianca there as well. Crash noticed Bianca kept rubbing her eyes and asked worriedly what was wrong with them. Then he turned to Jenica and went straight to the point. Why exactly had she come here? Jenica hesitantly explained that she had only come to call everyone to eat, then awkwardly told her younger sister not to look at her like that. She added that since Crash still could not walk on his own, someone would bring food directly to his room later. Grace narrowed his eyes in suspicion and asked whether their family needed to speak privately. Jenica avoided his gaze and only lowered her head, answering that it was more or less so. Grace thought to himself, she did not even dare look him in the eye. He remembered that in his previous life, Jenica had looked exactly the same before apologizing to Bianca. Perhaps this time, she was about to apologize as well. Crash softly called Bianca's name. Looking straight into his fiancée's eyes, Crash told her that if the other person apologized, she could simply ignore it. Whether to forgive or not was her right. He held her hand and promised that when that moment came, the two of them would return home together. Bianca froze, an unfamiliar feeling suddenly rising within her, and making her let out a soft sound of astonishment. Flower petals seemed to be drifting gently through the space, and Bianca raised a hand to touch her own face. A radiant smile unexpectedly bloomed on her lips. Bianca used 2 fingers to gently pull at the corners of her mouth, feeling the joy in her heart clearly for the first time. She happily realized that her heart truly felt very warm at that moment. After that, she excused herself to go have a meal with her family. Crash smiled and waved, telling her gently to have a safe and peaceful walk. But as soon as her figure vanished behind the door, Crash's face immediately turned cold. He called out loudly, Abellis, lend me a hand for a moment. Come here quickly. Blazing red energy appeared. Crash ordered the magic rats to secretly follow them and listen to what they said to Bianca. The camera powered by rats, nodded slightly and slipped to the darkness. Crust clenched his fist, his voice tightening with threat. If those people dared insult Bianca, he would definitely make them pay a heavy price. Witnessing that excessive protectiveness, the Black Crow merely watched in silence. Crimson could not help sneering, wondering how he could still worry about his fiancée when he did not even have an arm left. With a ruined body like that, did you truly think you still had enough strength to seize immortality from me? Crimson looked at Crash mockingly, adding that those who had reincarnated were indeed not easy to deal with at all. This wound would recover at once as long as the Saintess took action. In the Holy Kingdom of Freeman, one of the world's 4 great powers, there was a Saintess there who possessed the supreme divine power bestowed God. It was a power that could bring the dead back to life. The Wanham family would certainly never spend an enormous sum to invite the Saintess to save someone regarded as trash like you. Crimson continued pouring cold water on Crash's hopes. In response, Crash only smiled. If he lost an arm, he could replace it with a better one. What was there to worry about? Crimson was stunned as he understood his true intention. Replace your arm? Are you planning to do that? So that was why you dragged that little girl into the group. Crash admitted that taking in a bellows had originally been for that purpose. For someone who controlled corpses like her, stitching on an arm was only a trivial matter. Although Abelard complained about the sudden order, she still said confidently that this would be as easy as candy. Crimson shuddered at that calculation. You intend to squeeze her dry down to her very last bit of value. You time regressors really are all terrifying, two-faced creatures. Crash replied calmly that this was only an unexpected accident as well, since he had been forced to sacrifice an arm. When Crimson pressed him on whose arm he intended to take, Crash declared coldly, "The Sword Demon's arm is the best. Let me borrow it for a while." Crimson roared in shock, never expecting Crash to have known long ago that the Sword Demon was his subordinate. That was a renowned master who had once shaken the world with his lightning-fast sword draw, cutting down opponents in the blink of an eye. More importantly, the Sword Demon was Crimson's special subordinate. He was the subordinate Crimson Garden treasured the most, someone that man had poured tremendous effort into tempering all this time. Did you not always want me to become stronger? Then take good care of me, just as you once did with the Sword Demon. Crash smiled provocatively, making Crimson angrily bark at him to shut up, because he had already passed on all his secret sword techniques to him. Crustum understood very clearly the feelings Crimson held for the Sword Demon, as well as his other subordinates. He realized that Crimson Garden's weakness actually lay in how simple it was to trace his true body, because that man observed the world through the eyes of his subordinates. Crash knew Crimson had unknowingly formed emotional bonds with them that even he himself had not noticed. At present, they also had the Saintess's help. Crash pondered as he remembered Arthur's warning about using healing magic to prolong torture and force subordinates to reveal the location of their hideout. He understood that this was precisely the weakness that could be used to persuade Crimson. Although the Sword Demon had died of old age, the essence of his swordsmanship still remained, and Crimson would certainly remember every detail clearly. Crash said bluntly, "If the Sword Demon's arm is grafted onto my body, that man's ultimate sword drawing technique will be reproduced once more." Would the Sword Demon himself truly not want such an heir? Before Crash's skillful words, Crimson could only click his tongue, thinking to himself that with a tongue that slick, it would be a waste if he did not sell insurance. After thinking it over for a while, the Black Crow asked for 2 days to prepare and steady his mind. Crash smiled in satisfaction. "Thank you, Crimson Garden." Looking at the arm still wrapped in bandages, Gruss breathed a sigh of relief, since this matter was temporarily settled for now. Even so, he began worrying about the Wanham family's reaction. He also could not help worrying about the safety of the butler Arius, because the fact that he was at Harden House would be exposed sooner or later. He told himself that if the situation became too tense, he would simply tell Arius to ignore it, since they had never paid any attention to him anyway. Yet as he lay on the bed, an uneasy premonition still silently rose in Crash's heart. That premonition quickly became reality at the Harden House family dining table. His sixth sense was even sharper than Wi-Fi. Mario Diana Okan, the family's eldest son, was slamming the table and shouting at Bianca, forcing her to give up the position of fiancée to her younger sister Jenica. That man greedily realized that Crash was no longer trash after defeating that master, so he wanted to turn him into the family's strongest card. With his selfish nature, Mario declared that whatever he wanted, he had to seize by any means. "Therefore, I absolutely cannot give up this position as fiancée." Bianca stood before Mario, her gaze strangely resolute. She made it clear that the only thing she wanted to protect to the very end was her status as Lord Crash's fiancée. Mario slammed the table in fury, cursing her as a cursed creature who would be abandoned sooner or later, and was not strong enough to bear the responsibility. Jenica could not endure her brother's cruelty and sprang up to stop him, but Mario coldly brushed her aside. That man forced Jenica to shoulder the engagement herself if she felt guilty toward Bianca, while also making her consider the family's interests. Bianca looked at the two people before her, her heart turning cold. This family had already rotted through, so following her husband would be easier on her heart. She bitterly realized that Harden House had never had a place for her, when her father and older brother had never truly cared about her. Whether she was expelled or lost her status as fiancée, Bianca was still determined to follow and stay beside Lord Crust to the very end. Mario roared her name in a fit of rage. An unexpected knock at the door shattered the tense atmosphere. Mario shouted that he was busy and anything could wait, yet the door still opened. Crash strolled in calmly and apologized for barging in so abruptly. He admitted he had overheard a few things in the corridor, accidentally, but very much on purpose, friends. Mario froze and called out Crash Wanham's name, then advised him to lie still and rest since his wounds had yet to recover. Crash curled his lips and brought up two opposing rumors spreading outside. One said Crash had heroically saved his fiancée and defeated the Butcher, even after losing an arm. The other said the Hardenhouse family defenses had been far too lax, allowing a killer to infiltrate and place noble family members in mortal danger. Crash asked Mario Tyndall which rumor would be more beneficial, especially while the head of the family was away. Mario's face darkened, sweat pouring out. His voice trembled as he asked what he wanted in the end. Crash said it plainly, very simple. Let Bianca be free to do what she wants and let her decide for herself whether to continue or cancel the engagement. Faced with that demand, Mario could only stand there in silence, lost in thought. Crash also declared with absolute certainty that he would never abandon Bianca, nor did he care about that wicked curse. Bianca looked at him, deeply moved. Mario was astonished by the deep affection between the two. In the end, he sighed in defeat and told Crash to help Bianca quickly. Crash then made his final request. As for his arm, say that the priest invited by Hardenhouse had successfully healed it. He even mocked that this way, the family could save the extra money for hiring another priest. Mario suspected Crash had his own calculations, but still had no choice but to agree and told him to report back once there were results. Crash thanked him, then left with Bianca. Mario silently watched the two of them from behind. Jenica told her brother that Bianca really had changed a great deal. Mario fell into thought, even considering simply letting the two of them get married and be done with it. Elsewhere, in the darkness of the noble mansion, a powerful man was holding a report in his hand. That man softly called the name of his youngest son, his tone carrying an inscrutable air of mystery. 2 days later, in the broad courtyard of the Haydenhorn mansion, Crash was still training tirelessly despite his body being covered in injuries. He realized everything was harder than imagined. To combine one sword with the sword demon's drawing technique, he had to concentrate aura and invasive poisonous blood into the same point. Sweat soaked Crash's face, and he clicked his tongue softly, blaming himself for still reacting too slowly. The only bright spot was that Bianca's core was still operating very stably. Thanks to it, the eruption of the invasive, poisonous blood had been fully suppressed. Not only that, it also helped him notice the fatal weaknesses of the incineration skill. It truly was the best protective item in the story. In essence, incineration used Ignis fire to burn the energy from poisonous blood, helping the body break past its limits. In exchange, the price was brutally severe. Crash collapsed onto the ground, gasping as he realized that after incineration ended, his entire body would be completely paralyzed. If used for too long, his organs risked being burned to ashes. Gazing up at the high sky, he yearned for the ability to control heat so he could maintain his power longer. Suddenly, a cold current carrying the negative power of the moon appeared in his mind. Amid the blazing flames, the image of someone wrapped completely in bandages slowly emerged. Fiery red hair and cold, sharp eyes made that figure even more mysterious. Krasner wore a sinister smile amid the strange black feathers falling around him. So the next target had been determined. It was none other than the ancient secret art Divine Moon Shadow of the Fire Emperor Aslan Agris. His eyes blazed with determination. As long as his arm fully recovered, he would definitely seize Hai's wish. Crash stood before a gigantic ancient tree with a strange shape, then softly asked whether this was Abalaz's home. Crow Crimson immediately answered that this was indeed the place. Right after that, a maid with long rabbit ears appeared and bowed respectfully. She said it was a great honor to welcome Lord Crash, and that the master was waiting inside. Looking at the adorable rabbit ears of the maid from Living Slaughter, corpse number 8, Crash thought in surprise that Boss Abalaz's aesthetic sense was indeed a little strange. He stepped inside and realized the space was still exactly the same as last time. It seemed Abalaz had used power to connect the dimensions together. The moment Abalaz saw him, she cried out in excitement, "Crash, you're here. Everything for the transplant has already been prepared." Crash's gaze stopped on the withered, pitch-black arm placed on the table. He asked whether that was the sword demon's arm, and whether it could be connected immediately. Abalaz warned him in a grave voice that it could be done, but he would suffer unimaginable pain. Seeing number 8, holding a huge hammer, Crash started, then quickly calmed down because he was already far too used to pain. Abalaz smiled challengingly. "Crying will be useless, darling. Once you're on the operating table, there is no way back." She ordered number 8 to tie Crash down tightly, then bring over that arm to begin the ritual. "All right, begin," Abalaz signaled loudly. A burst of blazing red energy immediately erupted with ferocious force. It enveloped Crash and the demon arm before him. Bone-piercing pain crashed down, forcing Crash to bite hard on the cloth to suppress his scream. sweat pouring from him like rain. Process of restoring and fusing the sword demon's arm remained tense until the very last moment. Abalaz focused on connecting the final nerves. Streams of blue-white electricity kept jolting through Crash's body. When the nerves were connected, he widened his eyes from the overwhelming shock. Ritual ended, and Abalaz breathed a sigh of relief before looking at Crash with admiration. You endured it without fainting, but Crash only snapped. Don't just stand there watching, hurry and untie me. Maid number 8 panicked and apologized, then hurriedly loosened the ropes binding him tightly. Crash thought to himself that there had been a reason he had forced himself to stay conscious from the beginning until now. Staring at the new arm, dark, sinewy, and filled with a sinister strangeness, Crash told himself that when new goods arrived, their output had to be tested right away. Immediately, purple-black energy surged and covered the monstrous arm, making Abalaz cry out in horror. What the hell is that? It looks truly terrifying. The muscles on the new arm twitched continuously, releasing a frightening pressure. Crash poured in all his concentration, because he understood that if he fell unconscious, the arm, after absorbing the poisonous blood, might lose control and go berserk. Therefore, he had to regulate his aura himself so it could gradually adapt to his body. After a period of struggle, the flow of energy finally stabilized. Crash clenched his fist tightly, feeling extremely satisfied. Just then, the crow Crimson flew over and asked whether everything was finished. Crash sensed the perfect connection and replied, "Now it feels exactly like my real arm." Crimson eagerly suggested taking the chance to test it while he was learning the sword drawing technique. Crash turned to ask Abalaz to borrow the training ground, but she immediately flew into a rage. Only when Grimm mentioned that he was searching for an ancient book about hand-to-hand combat skills did Abalaz instantly change her attitude, her eyes shining as she rushed over to flatter Lord Grimm. That dizzying change left Crash speechless. For the sake of passion, all shame had flown clean away. Abalaz cheerfully ordered number 8 to lead the way at once. On the way to the training ground, Crimson asked him sternly how much he understood about Sword Demon's sword drawing technique. Crust calmly replied that he only knew the move was extremely powerful. For a reincarnator, his learning was so poor that Crimson nearly went mad with rage. What is this? Bearing the name of a reincarnator, yet knowing only that much, and you still dare ask me to hand over Sword Demon's arm? Crimson began explaining the core difference. Ordinary sword drawing arts merely gather aura, then release it at extreme speed. But Sword Demon's technique stood on another level. It divided the accumulated aura into countless tiny particles, creating an explosion with maximum destructive force. Those minute aura particles accelerated the explosion when the pressure inside the scabbard reached its peak, so powerful that the sword itself could shatter. After a long and rambling explanation, Crimson asked whether he understood what he had just said. Faced with that expectation, Grass still frankly admitted that he truly understood nothing at all. He realized that listening to theory alone was useless, so he decided to try swinging a few times to see whether he could create an explosion. Crimson flapped his wings and flew up, encouraging him to trust that arm. The sword strike's sword demon, once unleashed, must still be imprinted in this body. Crash focused intensely, his eyes blazing with resolve. With a skilled teacher in Sword Demon's arm, everything was ready, and only his will remained. He resolved to train relentlessly until he completely mastered Sword Demon's legendary sword drawing art. Even if he had to swing his sword tens of thousands of times, even if his body fell apart from exhaustion, he was willing to pay the price to reach that ultimate power. For many days afterward, the training ground kept trembling under violent eruptions of deep blue aura. Sword strikes were unleashed. Unbelievably fast. Number 8 stood at the side watching, then coldly poured cold water on him, saying she could still see his sword path with the naked eye. That remark made Crash freeze, sweat streaming down his weary face as he realized he was still far from the realm of invisibility. He understood that Sword Demon's sword drawing art had to be so fast that ordinary human eyes could not follow it at all. To stand alongside the legend, Crash had to make his sword vanish before his opponent's eyes. Speed depended on aura, not the hands. Crash planned to return to Green Pine Pavilion to train his skills further and raise his overall strength. He turned to thank number 8 for training with him for many days. Number 8 advised him to trust himself more, because someone with a single-digit code like her was already a true swordsman. Even so, the enemies he would face later would far surpass swordsmen. Crash thanked number 8 thoughtfully, just as Abellis poked her head out and asked. Crash said he had been about to look for her. Today, he would return to the Wanham family, making Abellis panic and ask what she was supposed to do. Abellis lowered her head sadly and admitted that outside the Wanham house, the world beyond was full of frightening people to her. Crash warned that the 5 elders might have noticed something abnormal, and might even enslave her, then asked her for a favor. Before Abellas and number 8, Crash solemnly asked them to watch the one known as the Poison King and not let that man approach the building. His name was Wang Yai. As long as she could protect Clan Chief Dagrachan's safety, that would be enough. Abellas widened her eyes when she heard she had to deal with the Poison King, one of the 10 great masters. But if it was only protecting the clan chief, she thought she could bear it. Crash smiled brightly and thanked her, promising that if she ever needed help in the future, she only had to say so. Watching Crash back as he left, Abella's blushed without realizing it. She shyly thought that this guy did not even know what she would ask for, yet he had already rushed to make a promise. Number 8 worriedly asked her master whether doing this was all right. Abellas fell into thought, admitting that if it had been before, she definitely would have followed Crash. But if she stayed by his side any longer, she feared she would mistake him for her comrades from years past. Moreover, detail class meant having to face extremely dangerous invaders, so this choice was best. Abellas smiled and told herself that she had always liked staying shut indoors. Even so, deep in her heart, she quietly made up her mind. If Crash ever fell into danger one day, she would repay this kindness to the very end. A gorgeous white carriage began to roll forward, carrying Crash away through the endless white snow as he returned to the family. Welcome back safely, young Master Crash. Crash held the sleeping Bianca in his arms and quietly asked whether anything special had happened while he was away. Arius reported that the main family had once asked about his whereabouts, but he had cleverly said Crash was with Lady Bianca. Because the main family had always looked down on Crash as a good-for-nothing, the messenger only reported perfunctorily and even mocked everything in this place. Thanks to that carelessness, the family head neither suspected nor punished them, while that negligent messenger was also dismissed soon afterward. Crash praised him for doing well, saying he truly was his shield. Arius humbly declined, then reported that the head butler would soon come in person to assess Crash's ability. This person commanded the entire servant staff of the Wanham family, holding the authority to evaluate direct line members and report straight to the family head. Facing a master-level head butler, Grass inwardly thought this matter was indeed somewhat troublesome. To seize the power of Fire Emperor Aslan, he had to borrow the family's influence. It was time for Crash to prove his true strength. Crash still held Bianca in his arms and calmly asked whether there were any other issues. Arius reported that there was a message from Durling Dunferian urging him to bring the materials immediately. Crash sighed, because that man was always so impatient. The old butler continued to report that Lady Charlotte had visited and was currently still resting right in his room. Immediately a brilliant blue-violet aura erupted outside the balcony. Sacklot, the family's genius, suddenly leaped down from a high floor with terrifying pressure, the greatsword on her back radiating an overwhelming presence. Sacklot smiled at her younger brother and greeted him. It has been a long time, Crash. Crash froze, cold sweat pouring out as his bad premonition came true. He only managed to stammer, "Yes, sister." Charlotte said he had made her wait so long she was nearly bored to death. Charlotte Wanham, the fourth daughter of the Wanham family, smiled meaningfully. Crash still held Bianca in his arms, only scratching his head in embarrassment as he replied that he had thought she would only arrive after some more time. Sacklot narrowed her eyes teasingly and asked whether he had come home now because he saw that she had not arrived yet. Crash hurriedly denied it. The terrifying pressure from Sacklot left Crash stunned, his heart pounding wildly. He wondered whether she had already crossed the master threshold. But immediately after that, she switched to a cheerful tone. She reached out and pinched Bianca's cheek, saying she had heard how Crash to the end to protect his fiancée, then teased that she would not steal his lover. Grace looked at her sister with wary eyes. He explained that he was only startled, because she suddenly barged into the house. Crash's careless words made the smile on Charlotte's lips vanish. She squinted and asked again, "Truly dangerous. Is this your home?" Immediately after, she stomped her foot on the ground, cracking the floor and creating a violent shock in front of Steward Arius. Charlotte coldly reminded him that this was the Wanham family mansion, also their shared home. She looked hurt because she was only returning home, but greeted so coldly by her brother. Crash sweated, silently thinking that his sister and mother were exactly alike, quick to want to handle everything. He timidly asked if she was angry with him. Charlotte quickly returned to her playful look. She said she was closest to Crash, so very sad when he hid too much from her. She went straight to the point, hiding from whom? How could she hide from her? He just increased his power by one level, right? Charlotte's praise left Crash stunned. He doubted whether Charlotte had awakened the mind eye, an eye that could see through everything in the world. Charlotte said thoughtfully that she sensed a massive and very unusual energy existing within Crash. Faced with such terrifying acuity, Crash shivered, realizing why the hounds had never defeated his sister. He was astonished to realize that what Charlotte awakened was not an ordinary mind eye, but a spirit eye at a higher realm, able to see through world corruption, all illusions of enemies meaningless, and quickly nullified by her. So that means she also saw his true state, Crash thought. Understanding Charlotte's spirit eye power, he quietly looked at the black-purple flame flickering in his hand and asked Crimson, "How would others see my black fire?" The Black Crow casually replied that most would only see it as a flame full of ominous signs. Crimson added, "Those who can discern corruptive power in the world are very rare, unless they are corruptors or deeply connected to them." It used the example of Crash seeing the spirit mark on the necks of his subordinates. Crash nodded thoughtfully, so that was it. Crimson continued analyzing that Crash's power foundation was completely different from its original form. Crimson embodied world corruption, while Crash was merely blending that power into his aura. Therefore, most would think he carried some evil curse. Crash smirked, realizing everything was no different from before the regression. Despite Crimson's reassurance, Crash did not dare be complacent while carrying Bianca. He understood he had to act skillfully, otherwise his sister would erase his name from the household registry. Charlotte suddenly leaned close to Crash, her deep blue eyes piercing him, commenting, "You carry too much equipment." Crash calmly replied that he only wanted to test everything within his reach. Charlotte laughed, saying he was just as greedy as she was, and after all, Crash resembled their mother more. Charlotte told him to leave Bianca in the room and follow her to the training yard. Seeing the blazing green aura from her, Grace understood she could not evade. Charlotte decisively said, "I must test your current level." Facing each other in the magnificent training yard, Crash silently admired. Before the regression, he had never dueled her directly due to the vast difference in level. Charlotte assumed a defensive stance, believing her brother had learned many new techniques during this time. She lowered her voice to warn, "Fight with full strength. Even use forbidden moves if needed. I accept all." Crash gripped his practiced sword, eyes igniting with determination. "Understood, sister." Yet both remained still, neither striking. Charlotte thought, 3 minutes have passed and the brother still remains motionless. He still hadn't drawn his sword, not even his aura covering his body. She frowned, urging, "Why not attack? Don't make me lose patience." Immediately she stomped forward, the sword tip pressed close before him, but Crash still closed his eyes tightly. He felt the boiling heat within, controlling corruptive power to surpass limits. His eyes flared, flames erupted, his hand began drawing the sword in an instant. This moment of surpassing limits lasted only a second. He had to make full use of it. The sword immediately emitted terrifying dark energy in the blink of an eye. That made Charlotte also stunned. A resounding clash erupted as the two swords struck directly. Crash had unleashed all his strength from the first strike. The second strike immediately followed out of the sword sheath. Dark aura shot straight forward. Charlotte's wooden sword couldn't withstand the pressure, quickly cracking. At this moment, she had to use her aura to form a sword, not letting her brother strike her face, a symbol of a grandmaster swordsman. To confront Charlotte, Crash had to unleash the skill of the Black Hood's sword. The blade shot out from his palm. He nearly reached her, but ultimately in this duel he was still inferior due to level difference. Charlotte was astonished to realize, although Crash still could not completely break through her defensive layer, that strike had truly touched her body. She stepped back, looking at her exhausted brother with astonishment. This was truly unexpected. Charlotte silently admitted, Crash was the first to sense and pierce through her flow of power. That defensive energy was special divine energy, a perfect barrier never touched by weaker or equal opponents. Standing in the training yard, Charlotte withdrew her momentum, telling herself she had held back, only using energy to form sword aura at the last moment without real sword techniques. Yet a chilling feeling still ran down the spine of the Wanam genius. She understood that if Crash's reckless strike truly hit, perhaps in that moment she would have died, something impossible for a grandmaster like her. After the duel, Charlotte met Steward Arius in the mansion grounds. She anxiously asked, "Arius, Crash's arm is fine, right?" Arius respectfully reassured, "My young master is unique. These few injuries are nothing." By then, Crash had collapsed and fallen asleep on the sickbed after the intense duel with Charlotte. Charlotte thoughtfully confirmed the rumor, heard that Crash planned to enroll in Rayan Academy. Arius firmly affirmed that was true. Charlotte slightly curled her lips, her eyes full of anticipation. She calculated silently only 3 weeks left until school started, which would be enough. As an older sister, Charlotte decided to arrive at Rayan Academy first to see how her younger brother would perform. Sterling could not help but be stunned by the crow's working speed, not expecting it could complete everything so quickly. The performance of the time reverser was indeed unusual. Standing on his shoulders, the Crimson Crow spoke to remind Crash to ask if there was a training ground here. This elixir is best used in a spacious area. Hearing that, Crash turned and asked Sterling, "Can I borrow the training ground for a moment?" Sterling immediately agreed happily, believing it was the most suitable place for this type of medicine. Crash did not fully understand the meaning, but still prepared. Removing his clothes, Crash sat cross-legged in the center of the wide training ground, thinking silently, drinking this divine elixir is truly lucky. But what exactly did Crimson's expression mean at this moment? Suspicion was clear on Crash's face as he asked, "What exactly did you give me to drink?" Crimson replied in surprise, "You drank it without knowing. That elixir is called Nine Dragons' Cry. It is said that whoever drinks this potion will transform into a dragon after 9 roars. It destroys the body and aura simultaneously to force the user to grow stronger. Crimson looked at Crash with a demonic gaze, deliberately provoking him. Haven't you grown accustomed to pain? Just endure all 9 times, and you will transform. Durling stood beside, sweating at the elixir's madness, while Crash remained silent, waiting for the storm to come. The heat gradually spread. Crash said softly, it feels like a burst of heat is rising in his body, but not yet unbearable. If it's this hot, why even wear clothes? That calm reaction left Crimson astonished, saying, what is happening? Crash explained it initially felt like being burned by fire, but now it was just a warm sensation. He thought casually, having gone through similar experiences before, it felt normal. Crimson trembled, unable to believe his eyes. How did he live in his past life to be this terrifying? Crash curled his lips and said, that's a secret. In my past life I was the main character of an action movie. Seeing Crash mutter to himself, Durling wondered, was he talking to the crow, or was he hallucinating from the side effects? Ignoring the whispers, Crimson immediately urged him on. Never mind, absorb as much as you can. The more focused he is, the faster the speed. Crash immediately closed his eyes, concentrating his will to merge with the elixir's power. The golden flame suddenly erupted, enveloping his naked body. Crimson Garden August appeared in the form of a blazing red spirit behind the crow, silently admiring that focus. This one had endured his internal organs being burned and nerves reconnected, so this level of pain probably only made him tougher. He stared at Crash, confirming that among those who had reversed time, he was the one with the steeliest and most insane will. Crimson watched Crash struggle with the elixir's power and silently evaluated him. Perhaps it was because he craved his goal too much that he endured the pain. He believed that even if Crash collapsed, he would get back up, as that was the price of the contract between them. In his mind, Crash clearly felt the astonishing transformations. The aura that was once as small as a puddle now expanded like a vast lake. Previously, he could only refine the quality of his aura using the secret technique of the Green Pine Pavilion. But the innate aura capacity always had limits. Yet after drinking 9 Dragon's Cry, Crash immediately broke through from an intermediate expert to an advanced expert. He silently confirmed that meant he finally stood on par with the geniuses. Crash stepped out of the blazing fire stream, his deep blue eyes shining with powerful authority. Kim could not help but sigh at his immense and resilient life. He was amazed to see Crash use Ignis fire to burn away all impurities pushed out by the elixir. Crash collapsed, panting, drenched in sweat, but his gaze remained cold, staring at the black crow. Without this toughness, how could he fight those stronger than himself? Among them, there was even his sister. Crimson could only utter a helpless cry at his audacity. When Crash stood up and straightened himself, he was surprised to see everyone still waiting there and asked, all done? Oh, everyone is standing here waiting. Just woke up and already see a whole fan club. Durling explained that Bianca didn't want to leave his side, so he had to stay and wait with her. Bianca blushed shyly, whispering, as in fiancé you must always be together. Truly a top-quality household, clinging tightly. Crash gently patted her head, telling her next time to wait in a warm place, making Bianca beam with joy. She noticed Crash seemed taller, his clothes tighter due to his body's rapid development. Seeing that tender scene, Durling suddenly had a crazy thought of proposing to Charlotte, making Crash immediately change his expression. Black killing intent rose from Crash, as if asking whether that man intended to leave early, daring to become his brother-in-law. Despite that, Durling still smiled wickedly, teasing Crash to be his lover, making him only want to send the alchemist to meet death. Hey Crash, next year you'll enter Rahan Academy, right? Durling asked unexpectedly as he saw Crash resting after absorbing the elixir. Crash replied calmly with a firm yes. Immediately, Durling excitedly declared he would enroll a step earlier, just to hear Crash call him senior. Crash squinted at the alchemist, thinking Durling was not in the same class as Charlotte. Moreover, Rahan Academy did not use a normal grade-based class system. He replied calmly, yes, I know. If you don't pass the courses, you can't continue, right? Durling was stunned, not expecting Crash had already prepared for enrollment. He smiled brightly, believing this was a rare opportunity to be near both him and Charlotte. Crash wondered, she is going to study too. Isn't she planning to travel the world to prevent erosion? Durling just winked, saying it was his hunch, as he felt Charlotte would enroll this year. He hugged Crash tightly from behind, his tone whining as he spoke. So I'll wait for you to enter school next year. I'm very lonely, hurry up and enroll to catch up with me. Crash could only grimace at the friend's excessive enthusiasm, while Bianca silently watched from behind.